Hey everyone, it's Andrew Brown back again with another cloud certification course, and this time we're looking at the GitHub Actions certification. This certification is going to teach you how to work with CI/CD pipelines, specifically GitHub's tool called GitHub Actions, to show that you have DevOps skills, and you'll be able to add that certification afterwards to your LinkedIn or resume, so you can make your way into your cloud or DevOps career. Now, I just want to point out that if you want to support more free courses like this one, the best way is to purchase the additional study materials and practice exams and things that we produce over at ExamPro. It greatly helps us. And I just want to point out that this is not my first certification course. We've made certifications courses for GitHub before, AWS, Azure, GCP, Terraform, Kubernetes. I'm sure a lot more, so you're in really good hands. But yeah, I'll see you shortly, okay? Ciao. Hey everybody, it's Andrew Brown, and we're at the start of our journey asking the most important questions first, which is, what is the GitHub Action certification? And this is a programmatic focused certification, so you're expected to know how to program to some degree, creating CI/CD or build pipelines, writing YAML, that's basically the code that we're doing here, creating custom GitHub Actions, configuring workflow environments, securely passing data to workflows. And the unofficial course code for the certification is Actions. I got that from the GitHub website, and I've talked to them saying, hey, get course codes, and they still don't have them. The GitHub Actions is probably one of the most popular CI/CD tools this day. I can't say for certain if it is the most popular, as Jenkins is really hard to dethrone, but it definitely is something that a lot of people are gravitating towards just because you already have a GitHub account and it's so easy to use. Who's the certification for? Well, consider this certification if you are new to CI/CD and you want to adopt some CI/CD tool for your technical projects. You are a non-DevOps, you're not in a DevOps role, but you're trying to get there. So you're trying to add DevOps skills. You want practical skills that focus on implementation rather than theory. But really, that's this course, not necessarily the exam. And I'll talk about that when we get to the breakdown of the exam. So what would be a good roadmap for you? I, again, strongly recommend you take the GitHub Foundations before you take the certification. But once you do, this is a straight path that you could go take after the foundations. If you're looking to become a cloud developer or DevOps or something like that, then this is something that would be useful. I want to point out that these certifications do not necessarily test programming, technical diagramming, code management, or any other technical skills that are required for obtaining the technical roles. So you are going to see code on the exam, but I'm just going to say that it's extremely lacking. So it's more about like yes, you have to know how to use GitHub Actions and its syntax, but then they have a lot of business scenario stuff and things like that kind of dilute demonstrating that you actually have that knowledge. And again, remember, this is multiple choice and multi-select, so they can't really check your code and make sure you know how to code. How long should you study to pass this? Well, the content for this exam, I think, or this course that I made, is about 3 hours. So if you're a beginner, I would think that would take you 12 hours. Like if you skip the GitHub Foundations and you've never used GitHub Actions before, written YAML, or done DevOps or anything like that, then 12 hours seems like a good amount of time. If you're experienced, you have to go through my content and do the labs, and then you need to do practice exams and do some additional readings. So you're probably looking at 4 hours. So yeah, someone with a strong DevOps background or CI/CD knowledge, you're not going to have a hard time here. I would say average study time around 8 hours. I would split that time between lectures and lab 50-50 with your practice exams. Okay, so once you're done the lecture and labs, assume that you're going to put the same amount of time or similar time with practice exams afterwards. But for some people, it might be a little bit faster because they can get through the lecture lab content faster by 2 times it or skipping some of the content. Recommended study time here is 1 to 2 hours a day for 7 days. What does it take to pass the exam? Watch the lecture videos and do the hands-on labs, especially for this one, because there's a huge section in the exam guide where they just want you to know how to troubleshoot issues. And I don't make separate videos for that. I do them in the labs. And so some of my labs seem boring, but the purpose is to purposely run into troubleshooting issues so that we can know how to solve those when we get exam questions on them. There's also practice exams. You absolutely want to do practice exams, and we have a free set and a bunch of sets here. This one in particular, because there was a big chunk of content that I could not find in the docs, that I could not find practically working, and we had to create practice exam questions to the best of our ability. And it's the only way that's going to really help you get a good score, because for whatever reason, there's just internal content that is not documented, and it's the only way you're going to pass is really the practice exam. So I want to point that out. The content outline has 4 domains. So we have domain 1, author and maintain workflows. Domain 2, consume workflows. Domain 3, author and maintain actors. Domain 4, GitHub Actions for the enterprise. So these are the weightings that GitHub provides. So in the GitHub Foundations, I said they didn't have weightings. Now they have added them as a response to the last one. So that is great. I just want to point out that in my experience, the domain 4, which says 15%, I had way more than 15% of questions on enterprise. It was more like 35%. It really threw me off. So I do not trust this domain breakdown. And you're going to have to dig deep and try to pick up any kind of information you want or can with enterprise. The other trick is, like, if you want to learn the enterprise component, you'll have to sign up for an enterprise account. I did not want to do that. I'm trying to keep everything in the free tier here, so I don't do that in this course. But if you want to just cover your bases, then you might need to go ahead and do that. The exam center for taking this exam online is going to be with a PSI, so you can do that in person or online. If you can do online, if you can do in person, because it's a controlled environment. It's so much less stressful, and PSI in particular is brutal for their online experience. So there's Pearson VUE and PSI Online and Criterion. And Pearson VUE is the better online experience than the two. But like PSI, I always have problems. And you need to show up really early. And if things aren't working, you have to reach out to them, because you could just be sitting there and you'll just miss your exam, even though you're there. So just understand that. It's a proctored experience, meaning that there is somebody watching you to make sure that you're not cheating. So be prepared for that and make sure you have a nice, clean environment for them. The passing grade here is 75%. I have a big asterisk on that because GitHub officially does not provide you a passing score, but unofficially I can tell you that it's 75% because I asked them and they said unofficially 75%. And I think this has to do with the fact that they can't do a perfect score. Nobody does a perfect score, but for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable giving a finite number there, even though it is 75%. The number of questions you have in the exam is 75, 60 are scored, 15 are unscored. So you can afford to get 15 scored questions wrong. There is no penalty for wrong questions. And this could have been my experience where I felt like I had 35% enterprise questions on there, but that doesn't explain the missing 5%. Anyway, the format of the questions is multiple choice and multiple answer. I'm going to tell you right now, there was a lot of multiple answer, like an abnormal amount of them, and it was very frustrating. So just be prepared for that, that you're going to have a lot of multiple answers. Again, just more about the unscored questions. There are 15 questions unscored. They do not count towards your final score. Why do they have these? It's used to evaluate the introduction of new questions to determine if the exam is too easy and the passing score of the question difficulty needs to be increased, or to discover users who are attempting to cheat the exam or steal dump exam questions. If you encounter questions you've never studied for that seem really hard, keep your cool and remember they may be unscored questions. Let's talk about the duration of this exam. It is 2 hours. You get 1.6 minutes per question. The exam time is 120 minutes. The seat time is 150 minutes. Seat time refers to the time you should allocate for the exam. That includes the time to review instructions, show the online proctor your workspace, read and accept the NDA, complete the exam, provide feedback at the end. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We're taking a look at the GitHub study guide. And so you can get this over at the gh.io/certifications. When you go to register for your exam, you can download this. It'll also point you to the Microsoft Learn and LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is paid, so you can't just get that. You have to have like a premium account. And if you have a premium account, then go utilize that because it'll probably polyfill some of the things that I'm lacking on, which is the enterprise section. In my experience, my exam was more domain 4 focus, which was bizarre because it says it's 15%. Maybe it's just a fluke for me, and this is the percentage. If so, my course is fine, and you don't need to do any additional work. But just in case, you should probably read a little bit more about the enterprise features, even if you don't make an enterprise account. I did not like a lot of the questions on this exam because I thought that they were unfair. So for example, if we go to here, we have author and maintain workflows. One thing we learned about is configuring workflows to run scheduled events. And in that, we have to configure it using a cron expression. And so I said in the slide, I'm like, I don't think that they would expect you to know how to interpret a cron expression because that seems out of scope, but you should know that you can do it. And then I got an exam question that said, pick the cron expression. I'm not kidding you. Click cron expression for this complex thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That is not a fair question. Or there was like another one where they wanted you to know an API action. So we learned about, I think it's over here as well. We learned about something called repository dispatch. And they want you to know a specific API to use that. That makes sense. But I didn't get that on the exam. I got something else, like an API URL that I had to know for the GitHub CLI that had nothing to do with the GitHub certification, but just whether you could know what the format of the URL was. And I thought, that's really unfair. And so I had a lot of those, okay? So I just want to prepare you that this is a frustrating exam. It's not hard, but you have to just take your best guess to pass it, okay? But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to show you where that resource was, and I just wanted to tell you about some of my concerns about the certification experience, and so you don't get too stressed out about it, but just do your best to get through the materials. But please, please do practice exams because they'll make your life 100 times easier for this one, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are at the start of our journey asking the first important question first, which is, what is GitHub Actions? So GitHub Actions is a CI/CD pipeline directly integrated with your GitHub repository. And GitHub Actions allow you to automate running test suites, building images, compiling static sites, deploying to code servers, and whatever you can think of, because it's just compute that is automated, so whatever you want to do with it. You're going to find all the workflows that you run under the GitHub Actions tab. GitHub Actions has templates which you can use to get started, but for this course, we are going to be creating our own GitHub Actions in a folder called .github/workflow. So on the right-hand side is an example of a workflow. You'll be seeing a lot of these as this course is very heavy with the pragmatic side of GitHub Actions. You can have multiple workflows in a repo triggered by different events. But yeah, let's keep going here. So the idea is that when you run a GitHub action, we'll have a history of it in our UI. So here we can see multiple runs. GitHub has a repo for example workflows you can use to get started. So if we go here, there is tons in here. But to be honest, once you learn the basics of GitHub Actions, you don't really need any of these samples because it's just very straightforward. There are different types of events that can trigger an action to run, and we'll notice that on the on event there. And so in this case, if something was pushed to the repo, it would trigger this to run the jobs, and then those jobs will run the steps on the specified compute. GitHub Actions have 35 plus event triggers. Examples of common triggers would be something like pushes, pull requests, issues, releases, schedule events, manual triggers, but there's a lot more than that. So anyway, that is the intro to it, but we'll get into doing some hands-on here, and then we'll get into the specifics of GitHub Actions, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at GitHub Actions. And so I figured what we do is just explore the UI, and I'll just tell you how you're going to set your stuff up for the rest of this project. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to go ahead and fork this repo, because we need to run GitHub Actions in the repo, and I plan to run them all in GitHub example. So I want you to go ahead and do that now. I'm not going to fork it because I don't want to fork of my fork. But yeah, just go ahead and do that. And once you've done that, let's continue on here and take a look at some of the settings we have for GitHub Actions. So the actions will show up under this Actions tab, and you can see that I've already ran a bunch, and I actually have one here from earlier. But if we go over to our Settings tab, and we go over here on the left-hand side to Actions. We can look at some settings we have. I don't really cover this stuff much anywhere else, so I figured it's a good opportunity just to get it out of the way in the start here. But you'll notice the first thing is that we have action permissions, so we can determine what is allowed for our actions. So you can see that we have allow all actions and reusable workflows, disable actions if we want to turn it off, allow it for all of ExamPro, or non-select actions and reusable users. So it's things that are more specifically selected. So that is interesting there. Something that I was surprised is that if you go to the settings tab, you don't have an option to turn off actions here. You basically just disable them here on the left-hand side. Then we have our artifact and log retention, which we'll come back to later when we look at artifacts. But you can see here, it says 90 days for save. Then we have fork pull request workflows from outside collaborators. So whether you want to do these things, so just be aware that there are some settings here. But let's go back to the Actions tab and take a look at what we can do. So right now I have a workflow set in here. This is one we'll be doing in the future. But I just want to show you where workflows exist. So if you go over to Code, and you go into .github folder, and into workflows, this is where you'll put your workflows. And a workflow file can be named whatever you want as long as it's YAML or YML, because these are YAML files, okay? And so here's one that sets up a Postgres image that allows us to run Postgres. And you can have as many as you want in here. What I have noticed is that you can have as many as you want, but over here on the left-hand side, this tab, it'll only support so many. So you can have, I don't know, it was like 20 or something. And then after that, they'll be there, but it's just hard to select them and see what's going on. So you don't want to have too many workflows in here. And there's not really a reason to have that many workflows, but I just want to show you that you can have that many. All right. If we click into a workflow, again, we're just watching right now. We'll do something here in a moment. This workflow is disabled because I've disabled it just so that it doesn't run on push. But if we go into here, we can see information about it and how it ran. So if I click into here, I can see all the steps it ran through. So it set up the job, it initialized the container, it checked out code, all these steps. So hopefully that gives you kind of a preview of what it looks like to create a workflow. But let's go ahead and make a new one. So your screen might look a little bit different because they might be showing you templates. But let's go ahead and hit new workflow. And so here we have a bunch of workflows that we can work with. Okay, and so let's look for one that we could try out. So here we have something like greet users who are first-time contributors to a repo. So we could click into this. And so now we have a template. And so they're showing you a template where, and I'll just zoom this up here so we can have a closer look at what's going on. But here we have the name of the template. And you don't have to have a name, but if you do have a name, let's go back over here for a moment, it will show up here. And if you don't have a name there, it'll just show the path to this file. So it'll just show like .github workflows greetings YAML. Then we have our on. So on is saying like what event will trigger this. And so here, if we have a pull request target or an issue is opened, then it's going to trigger this to run. Then we define our jobs, and we're calling this the job greeting. We can name this whatever we want. It's just, that's what we call it. This is saying that it's going to run on Ubuntu latest. Okay, so it's running Ubuntu. We have some permissions, which I don't think I really get into much in the course, but maybe I'll come back to that later on. Then down below we have steps, and then we have this thing that says Actions First Interaction version 1. So the reason GitHub Actions is called GitHub Actions is because it has this modular component called Actions, which allows you to define how these steps work. And so what we can do is we can actually take a look of this. I think this is a repo. If I just type this in like this, you'll notice github.com actions first interaction maps up with this. All right, so go here. And yeah, it goes to here. So we can actually see that this is an external repo. And they describe exactly how it's used. And the cool thing is that you can create your own actions in Git repos or GitHub repos and then utilize them. So the idea is that this is going to pass stuff into this and run it. But anyway, let's take a look here. So we have uses action with repo token, issue message, and PR message. So with is our inputs. It's how we're inputting things into this action. And so if we were to go over to here, I've never looked at this action before, but let's take a look and see if we can make sense of it. So in here we have action.yaml. And so in here it should define inputs. So notice, we'll go back here again. Repo token, issue message, PR message. And we go here, repo token, issue message, PR message. And then down below here it says runs. And it says we're going to run a using Docker, and it's going to run this Docker image. So then I can go to here, and we can click into this Docker file, and we can see that it's running Buster Slim. So node version, node 20 Buster Slim. It's going to install our node packages, and it's going to run main.js. And then we can go take a look at main.js, which is under lib here. I wonder if this is like the compiled version. So this is the compiled version. So we probably go to source. It's probably the same thing. So it's TypeScript to JavaScript. And we can take a look at what this thing does. So here it runs a function. So first of all, it imports core and then GitHub. So we can utilize our actions there. And then it's bringing in those inputs here, as you can see. If they're not there, it's going to throw an error. And then it's using OctoKit, which is the SDK for GitHub. And the idea is it's going to establish a client. And then from there, it looks like it's going to try to detect whether somebody has opened a ticket or not. And it's going to use the SDK to do that. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of how things flow. But my point is that if you find this, you can almost always look them up and dig deeper if you want to know how they exactly work. But anyway, let's go ahead and I suppose go and deploy this. One other thing I want to point out is that we have the secrets.github token. So the idea is that this is going to grab our GitHub token. Usually you'd set this in your secrets file. So I'm not sure if this will work unless we set that. Let's go ahead and commit the changes and see if it works. So I'm going to go ahead and commit that. Okay, now notice that we have greetings.yml, so YAML file. If we go over to our actions, has it ran? And so notice that it hasn't ran. Now, if this was to be triggered on a push, let's go back over here for a moment to the code. Close out these tabs here for a moment. So if we were to go back to here, if this was to say on push and we went here, it would have been triggered, okay, but it wasn't. So what would cause this to run? And if we go back to here, we can see, it's hard to get back to the code, but we'll go back, sorry, we'll click here again. And it's expecting, there we go. It's expecting something with issues. And so I'm assuming that what it's saying is like, if you create an issue or use an issue. I'm just guessing, but we can go take a look and look up the documentation. So we'll say GitHub Actions on events that trigger workflows. And then on the right-hand side here, we can take a look. So we'll type it up here and look at issues. It says here, so webhook event payload is issues. And then we have activity types. So there's probably a way that we can narrow it down. I'm not sure if we could just put like a period here and then type the specific thing. That'd probably be good to know. But it seems like if any of these are triggered, whether you open, edit, delete, if it's the first time somebody's done something, yeah, here it is. Okay, so we can on, open, types, open, edit, milestone. So we have to assume this is going to trigger for anything that happens with an issue, okay? So what I'm going to do is going to go open a new issue. And we'll say bug report, doesn't matter what it is. I want to report a bug. I'm going to go down and create a new issue. And I'm going to go back to actions. And now notice that it's being triggered. So we're going to click into this. Notice that it's queued up. Okay. And if we click into here, it's starting the job. And it moves pretty fast, but you can see here that it's running the operating system 2022-04 LTS. And then it gets the runner image. All right. Notice that it gets our GitHub token, which is interesting because I didn't set a secret, so I guess it must just be already accessible. And then we are, notice it says download action repository. So the idea is that these are, again, remember that GitHub, this repo here, is a, this GitHub action is a repo. And so it's going to download, not clone, but download this repo into this compute. And then we're going on to our build steps. And so it's doing some build steps. So it's just building the Docker container. And then it's running the interaction action. So it's going to run this step here. If we go down here. So, right, we're on this step. Okay. And then we see some logging. And notice that it's running this Docker container. So remember that this repo here, when we looked into it, it's running a Docker file. And so it's basically running this Docker container and passing all this stuff to it. And it says checking if it's the user's first contribution. So if we copy this, I bet we could find this in the TypeScript code. All right, and I search for it, and so there it is. That's what it's logging right there. All right, it says adding message. Message will be displayed on the user's first issue, issue 13. So again, if we search part of this, it probably shows up. Probably not all of like this, but we probably just take some of this out here. Okay, not showing anything. That's totally fine. But anyway, my point is, that's how you can trace through to it. And having pragmatic knowledge, not just of YAML, but coding knowledge is going to make it so much easier to work and understand with GitHub Actions, especially if something goes wrong. All right. But for the most part, when we want to create actions, I don't really go to new workflows. I just create what I want. But it is nice to go in here. You can click into this stuff and see what's going on. So I can click at this Ruby on Rails one. And, here I can see this one setting up Ruby on Rails and stuff like that. And maybe we'll take a look at these later on. But for the most part, we will end up creating workflows manually. So now the next thing I want to do is I have this workflow, but let's say I don't want to use this workflow anymore. What we can do is we can go disable it so it doesn't run. So if let's say I was to open another ticket, I wouldn't want, well, actually, first of all, would this even run again? Because if we were to open another ticket, I don't think it would. So it'd only be the next person, but let's just say I did not want it to run again. We can go up here to the top right corner and disable the workflow. Okay, so now that's disabled. Let's say we don't want these workflows at all in here anymore. We would have to delete them out and then they would just vanish from here. So let's go ahead and kind of simulate that. So I've gone back to code here. And what I'm going to do is press period on my keyboard, period. And what that's going to do is open this up in github.dev. So all it's doing is saying github.dev and then the repo name afterwards. This is something we do a lot in the GitHub Foundations course. This will not cost you anything to run because it is 100% free. There is no compute running per se. There's no server attached to this. But let's say I'm done with these and I don't want to mess with these anymore. I'm just going to take these and I'm going to drag them. You just need to delete them, but I'm going to drag them into my templates folder because I don't want to really get rid of them. Okay. And so now they're over here. You can see I have a bunch of templates, so we're going to have a lot of fun working through this. I'm going to go ahead and just save these changes. So I'll just say move these to save them for later. All right. And if we go back to actions, notice it doesn't show them here anymore. I have these previous runs over here. We can go in and we can delete this workflow run. Because personally, it's a big mess. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to clean this up so that everything looks really clean here. So when I'm working through this, so just give me a moment. I'm going to pause and just delete them all, okay? All right, there we go. So I've cleaned everything up. And yeah, this is probably what it looked like for you when you first came into here. And so probably what you would have to do is click this button here. Of course, probably would have helped if I told you that earlier. But yeah, so that is the experience. Hopefully that gives you a good start to what GitHub Actions is. It's not very hard to use or learn, but we do need to do a lot of iterations here. And so that's what we're going to do and look at all the features in particular, and you'll find that you'll know how to use GitHub Actions really well in a very short amount of time. See you soon. Let's talk about workflows. So a workflow is a configurable automated process that will run one or more jobs, and workflows are defined by a YAML file checked in your repository. These files are going to be located at .github/workflows. I think you know that by doing the lab now, but just going to reinforce where this stuff is. Workflow triggers are events that are cause workflows to run. So this could be when an event that occurs within your workflows repository, events that occur outside of GitHub, and this is generally with the repository dispatch. You'll definitely want to remember that one as it will show up in your exams. And then we have schedule times or manual. So those are the ones that we're going to be looking at, and we'll definitely cover all of them. A repo can contain multiple workflows. As you saw, we had like tens and tens of workflows. So clearly we can have as many workflows as we want. One thing I want to point out with workflows is the name property. So if you provide a name, you don't have to. It will show up here on the right-hand side as a nice name. If you do not provide it, then it'll just show up like this. So it's whatever you prefer to utilize, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at workflow components. And so we're just basically saying what goes into a workflow and making sure we understand what all those components are. The first are actions. These are reusable tasks that perform specific jobs within a workflow. We have workflows. These are automated processes defined in your repo that coordinates one or more job triggered by events or on a schedule. We have jobs. These are groups of steps that execute on the same runner, typically running in parallel unless configured otherwise. We have steps. These are individual tasks within a job that run commands or actions sequentially. We have runs. These are instances of workflow execution triggered by events, representing the complete run-through of a workflow. We have runners. These are the servers, the host, and the environment where the jobs are executed, available as GitHub-hosted, self-hosted options. We have the marketplace where you can find and share reusable actions with your community. Why do I have such a boring slide in this format? Because the certification asks you to know all these points. I'm just trying to get them out of the way as quickly as possible. But I do have this little diagram down below so you can see the contextual idea. But we have a runner, which is your compute, the jobs which you see within your workflow. And understand there is a workflow file here, which I'm not showing here. But that would be, I don't know why I didn't do that. It should have been right there. And so then in there we have our steps and our actions, right? And then under our actions steps are connected together. So hopefully all those components make sense. It will make sense as we continue to work through the files, because workflow files are not that complex, and you will understand definitely at the end of the course what all these components are. So don't worry about memorizing any of this. Let's take a look at how we would trigger a scheduled event. And the way it works is that you would use schedule as the event trigger, and you would provide it a cron expression to specify when you want that to trigger. So here's an example. Let me get my pen tool out to make this a little bit more clear. So the idea is that we have this on, which says what do we want to trigger this workflow on, and we're going to do this on a schedule, and the only option is cron. So cron is an expression format. And so this translates to something particular. Just so you know, I've been using cron for the entirety of my career. I cannot remember cron syntax because the frequency that you use it is so low. So do not feel bad if you don't know how it works. But I will definitely be referring to crontab.guru, which is a quick way to work with cron tabs. Of course, we can use LLMs to help us get a time that we want. But anyway, the point is that we have a cron tab, and then down below we have our job, and our job's called test schedule, and it's going to run on Ubuntu. And if we look at the steps, we'll notice we have this first one. And this first one says, not on a Monday or a Wednesday. So it says GitHub, which is a context, get us the event and the schedule. And if it equals this, or does not equal this, which would be this one up here, then skip this step on Monday and Wednesday. All right, and then over here, this will run every time down below. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, again, don't stress out about cron logic. Just understand that it takes a cron expression, and we have a convenience tool. Okay. Hey everyone, it's Andrew Brown. In this lab, we want to take a look at how to run a scheduled event. We saw that it's very straightforward, but let's make sure we know how to do it. I'm going to open this up in github.dev as we don't need any attached compute. So I'm pressing period on my keyboard. Before I do that, I'm just going to right click and open the actions tab here, as I want to quickly toggle between the two here. Notice I have nothing set up here, so it is a clean slate. But what we'll do is wait for this to spin up. And so in here, I have that scheduled template somewhere here. Here it is. Okay, and so I just want to show you that if we look up scheduled, Workflows GitHub, they have a lot of interesting examples. So mostly when you go to these event triggers, you can always just go down here and say, okay, I want to know scheduled. And we can see some options here. They kind of explain cron expressions. But let's take a look here at this schedule action. So it says webhook event payload. So there's no payload to pass to it. There are no activity types. It's going to have the last commit on the default branch for the SHA, and it only works on the default branch. And it's important that you try to read these things because sometimes there are restrictions, like this one says will only run on the default branch and things like that. So just always take your time to do that. Now, another thing I'd like to check is, does this show up as a repo? So I'm going to go ahead and just type in GitHub, and I'm just going to take a guess and type in actions and then schedule, because all these should be open source. So it doesn't show up there, but I'm going to just say actions schedule GitHub. Maybe I got the address wrong here. Because maybe the question is, are they built in or are they always in a repo? So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. GitHub Actions repo. Let's try this instead. Okay, that is the repo. And so I'm just curious, does it show up? So it doesn't show up anything like that, so that's fine. So it's probably built in, but it would have been nice to know, like, can we look it up and see how it works? But this one doesn't specify, well, sorry, this is an event trigger, it's not an action. So that makes sense why it's not showing up there. Okay, I got a little bit confused. But anyway, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and copy this file. I'm gonna go up here into our .github folder. And I'm not sure why, but I guess our workflow folder vanished. So what I'm gonna do is create a new folder here called workflows. And I'm gonna create a dummy file called, I'm trying to remember what we call it for the dummy file. There's actually a particular file that you create when you want to, keep. Because it keeps deleting that folder or removing it because it's gone, but we'll go ahead and paste that in here. And so now we have the schedule tab. So the question is, how does this work? So this one is set to work on every 5 minutes. So if we go over to, let's say, crontabguru.com, it tells us some stuff here down below. So here it says at 4:05, next at this time, okay? So it's telling you the next time it will appear. But if I go ahead and just remove this here, now it says at the minute at 5, and then if I do this and this, then I get at every 5th minute. So this means it'll repeat every 5th minute. How do I know? Well, I don't really know this too well, but you can always just go over to ChatGPT and whatever tool you want to do and say, give me a cron expression that occurs every 50 minutes, only on Sunday and Tuesday. And I wonder if it can make it for us. There you go. So my point is that you don't have to really memorize cron expressions, but there is logic behind it. So that one here is every 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do, because I don't want to wait 5 minutes, I'm going to just change this down to like 2 minutes or 1 minute. We'll do 2 minutes. And I'm going to save this. And so we'll commit this. All right. And all this is going to do is run this every 2 minutes and then echo out the current server time. Now, since this is Ubuntu, we are just running a regular command, and date is something that is available on Ubuntu, and that's why it will print out the date there. But we'll go ahead and just say add schedule workflow here. And just a reminder, if you haven't, remember to fork the repo and do this in your own repo, okay? So we've committed that, and now I'm going to go over to the Actions tab. And so now it notices that the workflow is there. Notice that because I do not have a name, it shows the full name. I think we go back here. Yeah, we don't have a name there. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. But we're waiting for this to trigger. So this should just trigger on its own. So we're going to wait a few minutes. I'm going to pause here and then come back, okay? All right, I've been waiting a while here. I don't see anything, but let's give it a hard refresh and see if something shows up. Nothing as of yet. This is one that you have to be really patient with because I just know from experience that I thought it didn't work and I just waited long enough and then it happened. So there could be some time it takes for the server to spin up, but generally it's really quick. So yeah, again, we'll just have patience here and I'm sure it will appear, okay? There we go, finally triggered. It was definitely more than a couple minutes, so I was getting a bit worried there, but at least it appeared. I'm just gonna click into here and take a look, and you can see it runs extremely quickly, so duration 11 seconds. So we can go in here, say set up the job so we can see it, echo the current time, there it is, and there's the job completion. Now we can wait and see it trigger again. I'm not that interested in doing that. But what I am going to do is go back here, because imagine I want to stop this. We can go up to the top right corner and disable the workflow. We can programmatically do that as well, but for now, we're just going to keep it really simple and easy, okay? So that covers that, and we don't even have to move anything back. We'll just leave it alone where it is. If this becomes a mess, then we'll clean it up later, okay? See you in the next one. Ciao. Let's take a look at triggering a single event versus multiple events. So this is a single event where we are pushing on main. I do want to point out that I'm using this like expanded syntax, or the most verbose syntax. I generally use that because I don't have much luck with the more shorthand syntax, but understand you could have just done like, you could have done on push here, and then it would have worked the same because it would have defaulted to the main branch anyway. So understand that that is an option. You didn't have to do all of that, but I'm going to try to use the expanded syntax as much as I can because I prefer it. Okay. But anyway, the point is that when a push on main occurs, then it will trigger that job. You can have multiple events. So in this case, we have push, pull request, and release. So what happens when you have multiple events? Well, if you specify multiple events, only one of those events needs to occur to trigger your workflow. However, if multiple triggering events for your workflow occur at the same time, multiple workflow runs will be triggered, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. The idea is that if you did a push, a pull request, and release, you might see 3 runs, okay? Hey everyone, it's Andrew Brown, and in this video we are going to take a look at multiple events. So I'm going to press period on my keyboard, and that's going to open this up in github.dev, since currently we still do not need any compute. And in our GitHub Actions templates folder, I have this multi-event one here that we can utilize. And so what you can see here is we have on push branches main and dev, pull request branches main. So for this to work, we're going to need an additional branch, which is what I want to do here today. So what I'm going to do is go over here. Oh, sorry, that's not our repo. We'll go back to GitHub here, and I'm going to go to my repo. You got to go to wherever yours is. I'm going to see if I have any branches. So I already have one existing. I'm going to view all branches. I'm just going to delete mine. All right, but the idea is that you'll want to create your own. So we'll go ahead and we'll make a new one, and I'll call this one dev. And I'm making it off of main, okay? And so now we have that new branch. And so what I want to do is I want to test multiple events. Like the question is, if we do a push to dev, will it work? If we make a pull request, what's going to happen? So we just kind of want to observe what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is copy this template, and I'm going to paste it into our workflows directory. All right. And the question is, what's going to happen right away? Because we're pushing to main. Is it going to trigger a deploy right away? That's what I want to find out. So we'll say multi-event template. All right, and we'll commit that. And I'm going to go back over to here, and we're going to actions. And immediately we can see a run has occurred. So we'll click into that. And this has happened on push. Okay, so understand that as soon as you have push on main, it's going to occur. And all this thing does is it just says hello world, I think. There we go. Okay, so now the next question is, what happens if we do a pull request? Let's go ahead and try this. So in order to do this, I'm going to need to make some kind of change. So I'm trying to think here. We'll need to switch branches and do something. So I'm going to just go ahead and close out this tab. I'm going to switch over to dev. I'm going to press period. Okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just make any kind of change. So I'm just going to go here and make a space character, trigger workflow on dev. All right. And I'm going to go back to our repo. If you click in the hamburger menu, you can get back there quickly. And we'll go back to our actions, and we should expect to see that. So I don't see anything yet. We can give this a nice refresh here. And what we'll do is we'll check our event. So they say multi-event. And we'll go here. And I want to look at the code. Sorry, I want to look at the code here. And so if there's a push to dev, it should occur, right? Because we have it there. So what I'm going to do is go back. It says found a push 46 seconds ago. Okay. But I don't see a run. So the question is, did it work? Is there delay? Why is it not working? And I don't know. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds and see what happens. Maybe it will appear. So one thought I had is, does the file exist with our change? Like, did we make the branch and then do it? Or what order did we do it in, right? So let's go over to our code base and let's go into dev and let's see what's in here. And we go to workflows and we have schedules. So no, it's not. It's not in here. So the question is, will this template work even though it's not in the dev directory? And so it doesn't seem like it's going to work unless we merge it in. So that's something that we should know, because if we wanted to work in our branch, I guess we have to have that template in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a pull request. And I'm going to make a new pull request. And I'm going to go from main to dev. And there clearly is a change, right? We've added this here. So I'm going to go ahead and create this pull request. Right? And we'll merge the pull request. I'll confirm it. And what we'll do is we'll go up to Actions. And we'll see what's happening. So notice that it's happening now, and this is happening on what? So click into this, and it's happening on this pull request, right? So notice, we still don't have anything on dev. So now the question is, if we make another change here, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. Okay, just in case this is mucked up, I'm just going to close this out and reopen it again, making sure I'm on dev. I'm going to press period. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another change. Trigger event on push of dev. Okay, and so we'll see in our actions, does it trigger now? There we go. So just understand that the template in certain cases will have to be in the branch that you wanted to work on. Sometimes what happens when you have multiple events is like, I will see two pushes occur when there was only one. And I've read that can be a bug that was resolved, but in my experience, it sometimes happens. So just understand that these workflows can run multiple times. So make sure that whatever you're running can handle that, okay? But I say we are done here. So what I'm going to do is go over to our code, and I'm going to delete the dev branch just so we don't have that stray branch causing us any issues here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, which is here. Okay, I think that's deleted, yeah. And we'll go back over to Actions, and I want to disable this multi-event thing. So we'll go ahead and disable it. All right, so now it's disabled. And I'll see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at manual events. So you can trigger a workflow manually via the GitHub UI, GitHub CLI, or Git REST API. For the GitHub UI, I didn't necessarily find a way to do that, so I'm not 100% certain if that really is the case, but the doc suggested that we could. But this is the way that we would do it programmatically. So we would say, we would use the CLI in this case, and we do gh workflow run, and we'd have the file here, and then we could specify flags, which are their inputs. And here, this is actually specifying a file for input if you want to do that, as you can see there. So hopefully that is clear. In order for this to work, we have to use the workflow dispatch because it will accept inputs if you are utilizing inputs to, there. So just going back here for a moment, notice we have name, greeting, and data. Here we have name, greeting, and data. And you can define up to 10 inputs for a workflow dispatch event. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to trigger an event manually. For this one, we are going to need some type of compute, as I don't believe that we can trigger the event manually via the UI, but we will see what we can do, okay? Just in case we actually can. I think when they say triggering manually via the UI, it might be from one of the predetermined templates. But what we'll do here is we'll launch up GitHub Codespaces. It's been a little bit of time since I've used it. I usually like using Gitpod, but since this is a GitHub course, let's use GitHub Codespaces. And so I'm going to go ahead and create one on main. There are free tiers for this. If you don't want to use this, you can use your local machine. I just want my life to be easy, and I want to have a replicable environment that you can utilize as well. So I'll wait for Codespaces to spin up, and then we will make sure that we are authenticated. I can't remember if it comes pre-installed with the GitHub CLI, but we'll find out here in just a moment, okay? All right, so we have our Codespaces up here. I do not like this light theme. I can barely see what I'm looking at. So I'm gonna just go ahead and change this out. It never seems to persist, which is one thing I don't like about GitHub Codespaces. But other than that, everything's fine. We'll just choose a dark theme. Does not matter which one. And so my question is, do we have here terminal size? Increase that. And I'll go back to command palette here. You think by now I know these hotkeys. Control-Shift-P. Control-Shift-P. No. Control-Shift-P. I'm on a Windows machine with a Mac keyboard in a browser. Like, what could it be? But we'll go here and try to just increase this font size again. And again, and again, so you can just see what's going on here. But I want to see if the GitHub CLI is installed. It looks like it is. Am I logged in? I don't know. I would think so. I can't exactly remember what the test command is. Let me take a look here and see. What we could do. I really don't remember. We say gh issue list. Maybe that is a command. Yeah, so I'm already logged in. So this is perfect. If you're not logged in, I believe somewhere in here we have the login instructions. Somewhere in here. I remember seeing it. There is somewhere in here. Let me just find it for you. I think it's in the crash course. It's CLI. Whoops. Oh, this doesn't use Vim mode. Yeah, here it is. So like there's instructions and it's not hard to install, but again, this comes pre-installed. So you're going to figure that out yourself. If you're using a local machine. But what I want to do is I want to have that installed so that we can trigger the workflow. So what we'll do is go into GitHub Actions. And in here we have templates. And we should have one for manual. There we go. Let's take a look at it first before we do anything. Just going to increase the font here. So we have workflow dispatch, and we have the inputs for name. So here's the description, and this one is required. We have greeting, and that is required, and then some data. Now, I guess we could do this and have a data file. I don't really want to have a data file, but if it needs it, I guess I should do that. So what I'm going to do is make a new file here, and I'm going to call this data.json, and I'll just say in here, hello, Mars. All right. And so that will, I suppose, be our data file. We'll go back here. And I just want to make sure everything makes sense and if it references things clearly. So I think that is fine. I'm not sure what the data file should be. I'm just going to take a look at my slides as I don't really remember what we pass into there. I guess it's actually just a text file. But in this one in particular, it's a base64 thing. So what we'll do is I'm going to change this. Let's just say my data. And I'm going to get some data, and we'll take this here, for example, copy this, and we'll base64 encode it. So I think it's, what is it? Base64 encode Linux, because I can't remember what the command is. I'm pretty sure the command is base64. Yeah, it's something like that. So I'm going to go here, copy this, we'll go back. I could barely read that. But that says this here. We'll just say hello Mars in here. Hello Mars. And so that's going to give us this value here. I'm going to just copy that if I can. Copy. And then we'll replace this and paste. And so now we have our base64. Some other things that are going on in here is that, nothing interesting, but this is just using, you can see the base64 commands and things like that. So I guess we have our file and all that stuff is set up. So I think we're in good shape. let's go ahead and copy this. And I will go up to our GitHub Actions, our GitHub folder here. I'm going to go paste that in. And you know what? Just so that you don't necessarily have this, I'm going to go ahead and just refresh this here for a moment. I guess that's fine. I never saved this file, I don't think, so maybe it doesn't matter. This one's untracked, manual, trigger. Let me go back here for a second. So this one here is the same. I guess we never changed anything about this file. Sorry. I thought I changed something about the file, and so I was just trying to make it so that I wasn't taking out all the learning out of it here, okay? But anyway, so that file's there. Let's go ahead and commit this. So let's say manual workflow. I know I spelled it wrong. I don't care. If it bothers you, tough luck. And so that should be synced. We'll go back over to here. We'll give this a refresh. And so I'm looking under our actions, and I want to see that that is here. So it's here. Notice because it has the name parameter. So it says this workflow has a workflow dispatch. And, oh, we can run it. So I wasn't 100% certain because I couldn't find it before, but I guess it's right here. But how would it run this line? So say, hello, you. I don't know what it wants there. We'll run the workflow. And those two ones are required. So we'll wait and see what happens. Okay. And let's see the contents of the file. So notice that it just says contents of the file because there was no file to be passed along. But let's go ahead and now trigger this manually. So I think I might have in here have the command so we don't have to look for it. Here it is. And so we have GitHub workflow run greet YAML. This file is not called greet though. It's called manual. And the file is called my data. And so I'm going to copy this line here. And what I want to do is cd into the correct directory because I'm going to assume that it's relative. Otherwise, it's not going to find the file. And so we'll go ahead and paste that in here and hopefully it will work. Could not create workflow dispatch, resource not accessible by integration. All right, so it's not letting us do it. This could be a permissions issue, so let me go take a look, okay? Yeah, so there might be a workflow permission. So what we're gonna do is go over to here, go to settings, and on the left-hand side, we'll go down to actions, into general, and here it says allow all actions and reusable workflows. Any action or reusable workflow can be used regardless of who authored it or where it's defined. Any action or reusable workflow defined in the repo with ExamPro can be used. Any action or reusable workflow that matches the specified criteria. So, I mean, this is fine, the actions permissions, but then we have workflow permissions. So it says choose the default permissions granted to the GitHub token, which automatically gets passed. We learn about that later on, that it already gets passed during the run. But when running workflows in the repository, you can specify more granular permissions. Workflows have read and write permissions. Okay. Workflows have read permissions in repository for content. So it makes me think that maybe we don't have permission. So I'm going to go back over to here. And what we'll do, type in clear and type in GH. Because there probably is a way to add permissions. Just give me a moment to find out, okay? I didn't get any answers, but I'm going to just assume that we don't have permission to do that. Let's go back and take a look. I'm going to try this again and look at the command. Because usually the status code will indicate it says 403, resource not accessible by integration. So 403, that's not authorized, right? Oh, it is forbidden. Okay. So if it is a forbidden one, then likely that issue is the GitHub token. So I want to see if there is a GitHub token here. So I'm just going to type in $GitHub token. I'm not worried if you see it because it doesn't really matter. It's going to get replaced every time. I think they are short-lived. And so what we'll do is we will need to go into our account, and I'm looking for that token. So we'll go to settings, and then somewhere here, it's going to have access tokens, usually developer settings. And so we have personal access tokens. So we have fine-grained or classic. Kind of like the classic because it's easier to use, but we'll use fine grained because we're supposed to. We'll generate a new token here. And I got to log in, so give me a moment to authenticate. All right, so we'll have to create a token. This will be for workflows. Workflow token. I want this to expire literally tomorrow. Whatever the date is, we'll say tomorrow. Lets us use workflows. And so yeah, public repos, read only. I'm going to say for only select repos. This will be for the GitHub examples. Oh, I got to switch this over to ExamPro Co. Why can't I switch to my other one here? I mean, I am the resource owner, so that makes sense. And I'll try this again. So let's say ExamPro Co. What the heck? And I'm trying to get that token. Maybe I can't create a token because it's in an org. Give me a second. See, I'm not 100% certain, but what I'm going to do is just say, but I need more than read only. I could say all repos. It's not really what I want. And then we'll go to repository permissions. And what I'm looking for here is workflows, which is down below here. So I think because I have this in an organizational account, it's making it a little bit harder for me to do this. So what I'm going to do, just for this one, I really didn't want to do this, but I'm just going to fork this. So I'm going to create a fork. Yep, and we'll do copy the main branch exactly. And what I'm going to do here is I'll have to get out of this. So I'm just going to close this out. And I can get this out of here and this out of here. And so I'm going to try this again. So what I'll do is I'll give this a refresh. And I want to open this up in CodeSpaces again. Now for my last one, I want to make sure that other one's still not running. So I'm going to go back to my original one here. Yeah, see, they're still running. I'm just going to go ahead and I can't tell what's what now. This one is Reimagine Sniffle. So this is my old one. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And we'll wait for this new one to open. And while that is going, did I open this in the right repo? See, now I don't know. Okay, I'm going to close this one out. Sorry, I'm getting confused. I'm going to go here and I'm going to stop this one as well, delete it. And I want to go over to the Omen King repo, which is my personal. And I'm going to try this again. I'm going to go ahead and open in CodeSpaces. And then I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to go to settings, since that repo now exists. I'm going to create that personal access token specifically for this one. I'm going to go with fine-grained permissions, even though they're not that fun to create. And so I'll wait for that to open. And while that's opening, I'm going to generate this token. We'll say workspaces token. Let me run workspaces. Another thing I'm wondering is that maybe because that's an organizational account that I might not been able to do that, whereas in a personal account, I might have been able to do that no problem. So before I generate this out, I will want to trigger this first. So what we'll do is we'll wait for this to run here and then we'll try to run it, okay? All right, so this environment's launched up. And so what we'll do is go over back to our GitHub Actions. I'm going to cd into that directory. And what I need to do here is I need to run this file. So go ahead and paste this in, allow. And again, the workflow here is called manual. This is fine. The only thing that's changed is the data file. So it's called my data. And let's see what happens. So it says no default repo has been set for this directory. Okay, that's fair enough. GH repo set default. Omen King. There we go. I was confused because there's two different ones. And so now we have a 404 because I spelt it wrong. And I realize the font is small. Let me just bump it up so you can see what's going on here. So say manual, enter. Still a 404. Oh, you know, because in this repo, I don't think we copied it over here, did we? No, it is right here. MANUAL. M-A-N-U-A-L, M-A-N-U-A-L. Let's go back over to here. Let's go into our actions. There's nothing in here. So I have to enable it, I guess, by default. Maybe that's the reason why I didn't see it for the first time. And so we have some in here. So I don't want this and this in here. So I'm just going to get them out of here, as I just don't want them to trigger. I'll just push those changes. Okay, so push those, just so we're only dealing with one here. Okay, yeah, sync it. Push it. Come on, you can do it. There we go. And we'll refresh this. So now we only have the one, right? So we'll go back and hit up and try this again. And so now it says 403. So we're still getting a 403. So that makes me think that we need a token. So I'm going to make a token to have it expire tomorrow. I'm going to select this particular repo now. And we'll say GitHub examples. We'll go to here. We'll scroll on down. We'll say read and write for workflows. Whatever the default is, I'd like to know what it is. This is what I don't like about this. It's like it should just tell us. Well, hold on. We have update GitHub workflow files. That's actually not what we want to do. We want to run this, but I'll put it on there anyway because we're doing workflows. It says workflows, workflow run artifacts. So it's actually this that we want. It's this that we want. I mean, that's all I really want. So I don't know if I need anything else, to be honest. We'll go count permissions. Everything else seems fine. I'm going to generate this token. And so I have this token, and we're going to go over to here, and I'm going to go and set it. I'll just say export GitHub token, and we'll go and paste it in like this. I'm going to make sure it's there. So env grep GitHub. And we can see the token is here, 1111AA. Yeah, it looks the same, more or less, I think. 11K on the end, yes. And so now we'll go ahead and try and run this and see if that fixes our issue. And now it runs. Okay, so that's what it needed, needed the permissions. And apparently we can see the run from here. Might as well try it. If it will let us grab it, enter. And so we can see the run in its current state. Oh, I ran it twice. Oh boy, I'm not even doing what I thought I was doing anymore. Okay, great. We'll refresh this so it ran twice, which is fine. But we can see that it triggered. We'll click into this. And I'm going to just expand this here. And I'm really interested in this one to see if it converted out the contents of the file. And it did not. Oh no, it's right here. Hello Mars. Never mind. It worked. Great. So this one is great. We'll go here to actions. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell this to disable, even though this would only trigger in a manual event. And so we'll call this one done. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this workspace. So we'll go to code here. And I want to go ahead and say stop. Well, we'll just delete it because I don't need it anymore. And I will see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's talk about Webhook Events. So many of the listed GitHub Workflows triggers are from a webhook because if you look at it, they show this Webhook event payload indicating that it is coming from the API. So basically what's happening is that particular API calls are triggering these webhooks, if that makes sense. What is a webhook? A webhook is a public-facing URL that can be sent to an HTTP request, often requiring authorization to trigger events from external sources. So most of these webhooks will be triggered within GitHub when users are interacting with GitHub, which will in turn trigger API actions. Users generally don't have to directly call APIs or REST APIs to trigger the workflows. You can, but I'm just saying that you're just going about your business and these are getting triggered. But what we really want to know about are the external webhook events. So if we just talk about webhook events, we're probably talking about the external ones. And in order to do this, we have to use the repository dispatch. There are some things we need to know. So in particular, which is it will only trigger workflow run if the workflow file is on the default branch. So notice here we have repository dispatch and the type is set to webhook. Okay. When you make the request to the webhook, you must send a post request, send the accept type to be application VND, I assume that stands for vendor.github plus JSON, provide authorization with your personal access token, pass the event type as webhook. So here's an example of a curl. And so hopefully we can emulate this or simulate this using a curl and get this to work. But there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, I want to go ahead and implement Webhook Events. So what we're going to do is open this up in GitHub Codespaces. I'm going to make sure that I'm in my, I'm trying to decide here because we have the OpenKing repo because I had to create it to end up using the API. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just thinking about this, I only need a token. So I'm going to go over to ExamPro code because it doesn't really matter where I am then. Where I execute that, I can use that token anywhere. And we probably could have done that for the other one, but I'm gonna go back to ExamPro code repo. You go wherever yours is. You're gonna not have the same issue as me because you're probably using a personal account. I'm gonna go ahead and create a new code space. All right, and I think that I have the code for this already, possibly. Most courses, I just write this stuff out by hand, but I was sick, so I had all this time to prep everything ahead of time. And so we have something for Webhook. And I actually didn't run it, so I don't know if it works. So we're going to experience that together, try to get some troubleshooting going here, but we'll wait for this code space to be ready, okay? All right, so our code space is open. I'm going to go ahead and change the theme. We're going to change it to dark. I'm going to go over to GitHub Actions, into templates. I'm going to go ahead and copy the webhook, and we'll say allow. We'll bring this over into workflows, right-click, paste. And I want to get rid of these other three so I don't have any conflicts. I'll just delete those out. And we'll take a look at what we have for our code here. So we have repository dispatch types webhook, and then it will print out that event. So very straightforward. We'll go ahead and commit that. Add webhook. And we'll go and deploy that. So we'll sync those changes. There we go. And we'll make our way over to the Actions tab. We'll make sure that workflow appears. And so for us to, it says add webhook. Why would it trigger if it's not on the push? Huh. That's interesting. I thought it would only happen if we have the webhook in, but it apparently is still triggering. I'm going to try, I'm just going to do a test here. I'm just curious what would happen if we put a README in here. Or like a minor change. So I'm just going to do this, put a space, right? Does this trigger? And we'll give this a refresh. Sync the changes, okay. It triggered again. Why is it triggering? That's really unusual. So what I'm gonna do is I just wanna read up on this. Maybe it triggers on push as well. And we'll go here to repository dispatch over here. This event will only trigger a workflow run if the workflow file is on the default branch. You can use the GitHub API to trigger an event called repository dispatch, but it doesn't really make sense because we never specified. Well, I guess the question is like, is it on any webhook? Because if we say webhook, does that mean any kind of webhook will trigger this? Let me read that for a second, okay? So here it says, by default, all repo dispatch activity triggers to a workflow will run. Oh, so then I need a different type of name, but I specified webhook. So I would have thought that, okay, well, let's make a change then. And we'll just change this to whatever we want. So we'll just call this custom webhook. And so I'll save that. And so my question is, if I do this, custom webhook, will this prevent it from triggering? Because I think that's kind of important to know. And we'll give this a refresh here. And it still is triggering. I don't know if I trust it, so I'm going to give it a space here. And we'll do that again. And we'll sync the changes. And we'll check this again. What the heck? Okay, let me read this a bit more then. So I would say this is actually very confusing. I wouldn't expect this to trigger because it shouldn't. But if this is the case, I mean, the way we could prevent that is by using an if statement. So if we look up contexts maybe we can use one of those for GitHub contexts. Because maybe we can get information about what the name of the webhook or type is here. So if I'm just checking here to see if there's a context specifically for the type that is being triggered. So maybe we can go into GitHub here. I'm just going to open this up in a new tab. And we have GitHub Actions. So the name of the action currently running. So there should be some way to do this. Activity types. Let me type in types here. So I'm not sure exactly how we get that. So I'm going to go ahead and ask ChatGPT, how do I get the GitHub Actions activity type via a context in GitHub workflows? And maybe that will narrow that down for us because I'm not sure exactly which one it is. I don't have them memorized. So we have GitHub event name might be the case. Let's take a look here and see what it gives us. So, maybe that might provide it. If we go back here, oh, we actually already have GitHub event name in here. Okay, great. So I guess the question is if we go into this and we take a look. Oh, has this been failing? Oh, this has been failing this entire time. Well, that maybe is the reason why it's not working, because if it's failing, then maybe this is not even detecting this at all. You have an error on line 14. I remember this happening to me before, and it was like so hard to resolve the no problem here. So what I'll do, that's what's happening. Oh, you know what it is? There's a colon missing here. Okay. So I think this probably does work how it's supposed to work. I think in like our first video, I had that issue or somewhere else. And I don't know. I had that problem, but I must have missed the colon. So say fix the syntax. And so it probably wasn't reading this file whatsoever. Okay, so we'll go ahead and sync this. And we'll go back, and what we're expecting is this not to trigger. And so I think, yeah, it is now not triggering. That's what we want to happen. Okay, great. So let's go take a look at how we can run this. So I'm going to go back to our README file. And I already have a curl set up. So I'm going to go down here, and I have to customize it. The first thing is the repo. So that is ExamPro Co. For yours, it's going to be different, right? And then this one is GitHub examples. Assuming I spelt that right, I'm using the lower h by accident. That's totally fine. We will swap that out. And so this is what it's supposed to be. What is missing here is the personal access token. We'll go over here. We'll generate a new token just for this use case. And we'll go down to settings and developer settings and personal access tokens and fine-grained access tokens. And I apparently have that from last time. I'll delete it. We'll make a new token, say Webhook custom, and this will expire 7 days. I'm just too tired to do anything about that. And I'm going to choose this repo. The problem is that this is in the ExamPro Co repo. That's why we use the other repo, because I can't access it this way. I'm going to go get this token and see if this will work. Whoa, I don't want to delete that. That's my production one. I'm going to go ahead here and generate a new token with the classic. I just don't care. And I'm going to see if I can do that with workflows. I'm not sure if actions are in here at all. I think it's just workflows. And we'll see if this one works. Don't care what it's called. We'll go down below. Because I need something that's going to go across account. I just need my life to be really easy here today. I mean, if you want to use the proper one, you definitely know how, because I showed you in the last video. But I'm going to go ahead and try this and see if that works. So we'll go ahead and copy this and paste this in. We'll hit enter. And there must be a syntax error here because it's hanging. See, it's doing that. So not sure what it is. I'm just going to cancel it out. You know what it is? I'm missing a double quotation here on the end. And we'll try this again. And I'm really hoping that we don't have to go back to our other repo. Okay, so maybe it worked. We'll go back over to here. Give us a refresh. Well, this failed a moment ago, so I'm not sure if this is related. Maybe it's still not working. There's still a syntax error, it's saying. Okay, so we'll go back to here. And on line 16, it has a problem. Not sure what. I don't need to check out the repo. So what I'm going to do here is just take these 2 lines out. We'll just say try again. I only want this. I don't want that. This has my token and I don't want to commit that. And so we'll sync this here. I don't want to commit that. Are you not listening to me here today? I'm going to cut this out. I just don't want this to compromise my key. We'll discard this change here. Discard. Okay, because we can always grab it from here. I just want to see what changes it's going to sync. Please sync the changes. Thank you. I'm just worried that I might have committed my key, so I'm just going to double check here. Oh, we changed that back at least. And I mean, is that, do split here. What? Is that what I just pushed? Oh no, try again is the real commit. There we go. And yeah, so that one's more simplified. Let's go take a look here in actions. It's still failing. Okay, great. So what is our problem? Line 14, it's always line 14. Let's go back over to our repo here and we'll take a look again. And it has a problem with this line. I cannot tell what's wrong with it, but sometimes this happens. So I'm just going to take all of that out. Try, oh, you know what? It's not indented. 1, 2. Try again times 2. And we'll commit that. And we'll say yes. We'll go back. We'll go to actions. And I'm hoping that it doesn't show up. I'm going to just wait a minute or two here and we'll just make sure that it absolutely isn't triggering, okay? Just give me a moment. All right, so I don't think it's triggering again. So that means maybe there's no syntax problem. And so what I'm going to do is go back over to here. We'll just get this out of here. And did we not commit something here? Did I? What? I thought I committed the change. All right. Make sure we commit this. Like, am I missing something here? Oh, outgoing. It hasn't even gone anywhere. Come on. Go, go. Leave. Oh, please tell me. Oh, no. No. And you know, the thing is, like, I could take this. I could bring this over to something like YAML linter. That's what they say. Take it over to YAML linter and try it again. And it will tell you whether there's a problem now. That's just junk. I almost like entered it into some kind of junk site. And we say format or validate. Oh, it actually is showing an error. Oh. Incomplete mapping pair. Okay, well, what if I do this? What if I do this? What? What if I do this? Why? Okay, whatever. If it fixes the syntax here, that's all I care about. But you've seen me do this multiple times, having an echo and not doing that. But it must be having a hard time. And it is not copying copy. Okay, that's a frozen file. We'll try this again. Paste. This commit should not trigger a deploy. You can see a lot of the struggle with GitHub Actions is just YAML, but that's not a bad thing. Like, it's so fast and responsive. And so I'm not seeing it triggered now. Excellent. Okay, great. So now what I want to happen is to take this, or just hit up, I guess, on my keyboard and try it again. I want to go back and see if it triggered. And it did. Excellent. So I was able to use the classic token, which was a lot easier to work with. Sorry, I know we're not supposed to use it, but I did. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And go back here. And so that triggered, no problem. We'll go take a look at the response to dispatch. My other thought that I had was, like, if we had the GitHub event name and we printed it out, it didn't even print it out, it just printed out GitHub event name. Oh no, it printed out here. Never mind, right here. Okay, great. Maybe we could have used an if statement to limit it, but apparently we had that syntax error. But yeah, that one was a little bit trickier, but I guess we can call that done. So what I'll do is go over here and I'll stop my code spaces and I will see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Let's take a look here at conditional keywords for steps. So if you have a job, you can have an if statement, and it is a conditional that can be used to prevent a job from running unless the condition is met. So in this example, we are using the GitHub context, GitHub, and we're doing dot repository and seeing if the repo equals the same. You always must use the $ double curly expression syntax if you want to reverse the statement. So if you have an exclamation mark, you can do that. Here we have a function which is for expressions, which we'll talk about separately. But yeah, there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at conditionals. So I'm going to hit period on my keyboard here, and I'm just going to open this in another tab. I meant to keep a tab open so we can make our way over to the Actions tab. And so what I want to do this time is run a conditional. So I think I have one here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this one, and we'll paste it into our workflows directory. And it's very straightforward. The idea is that if this repo equals this, then say hello world. If it's not, say goodbye moon. So we're going to launch this one, even though this does not match our repo name. And so we're expecting only goodbye moon to execute, right? So we'll go ahead and say conditional. And we will commit that. We'll go back over to here. And we will see if that run. Well, it will run, but the question is, what will it run? So usually it's pretty darn fast here. And we'll expand it. And we get goodbye moon. Excellent. So let's go ahead and type in ExamPro Co. GitHub examples. We'll say conditional, modified, and so we'll wait for that to complete. All right, let's take a look here to conditional modified, and we'll see hello world and goodbye moon. So they both ran as we adjust the name. So that is all we wanted to do here. I'm going to go ahead and go to this example, which is example workflow. That's a terrible name for this one. We'll go ahead and disable that workflow, but yeah, because it should have been called conditional so we know what it is. But there you go, and I'll see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Let's take a look here at expressions, which are basically functions that you can utilize within your workflows that are built in. There is other things besides just functions, but I think these are the most important, so that's what I want to show you. The first are basically mostly string functions, but we have contains, starts with, ends with, format if you want to change the format, join if you want to join a string, to JSON, from JSON, hash files. So all that stuff is pretty straightforward, maybe except for hash files, but that just makes a hash of files. And then you have status check functions, whether things are successful or not. So hopefully that is clear, and we'll see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at expressions. So this should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to open this up in a new tab. I'm going to press period for github.dev. I'm going to look up expressions, GitHub Actions, so we can see what they're talking about. So I didn't cover everything. There's like literals and operators. That stuff is pretty darn straightforward. So I was mostly interested in the functions and check functions. I don't think we talked about object filters, as I didn't have much reason to utilize those. But if I find that it's on the exam, then I might come back and mention that. But you can see it's pretty straightforward. You just have a wildcard and some other selectors there. But anyway, let's go back and take a look at our functions. So you can see these are all the ones. I just pulled it in a list and showed it to you. The ones that are kind of interesting are these status check functions, where you can use them in the if statements, and that's where they're going to be mostly valuable, because it's whether it's success or canceled or always or failured. So anyway, we'll go back over to here. And I should have one. I've never ran it, but you can see why. There's so much stuff in here. but I've never ran it, and we're going to experience together whether this thing works. So go ahead and paste it into here. And before we do, I just want to make sure, yeah, those are disabled. Excellent. You know what I might do is I might just get rid of these other ones here for now. Let's just go ahead and delete those. And we'll go over to here and add them, and we'll just say expression function example. And this one here will happen on main push, and I don't know why I have these in here. Let's take those out, because I only really want them on this one. Just take that out, and we'll give that a go. Oh, it didn't add it. Come on, I don't like that, because then it's like I might end up having 2 runs. We'll go here. We just have 1 run. Okay, that's fine. So we will wait for that to, oh, it already failed. Let me guess, syntax error. Of course, there's a syntax error. We'll go to line 25. And I think I kind of learned from last time a mistake. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Go to the YAML linter. And let's go to one that is not a spammy one. And we'll paste it in here. We'll say validate. And it does have an issue here on this line. On the labels part. Okay, so at least we know there's something wrong with it. What did it say? Which line? Issues label. I guess that makes sense why I might have the issues in there, but this one here, I guess I should put the issues back in here if we're going to do that, but it has an issue with this line here. What doesn't it like? Let's put the single quotations around it. Will that correct the issue? Sometimes it needs that. Oh, still doesn't like it. What's the issue now? Bad indentation of the sequence on line 27. Well, I wasn't wrapping it though. Line 27. So I think this one's fine. We'll give this a go. Try this again. Still doesn't like it. Line 24. Just give me a moment, okay? You know what? I'm not really sure what its problem is, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this issue one. It's not like we need to run all of them. I mean, you have an idea of how this stuff works, so we'll do that. And I think that was the only one with issues, and that's all I wanted that one for anyway, so we'll go ahead and we'll just try and fix expressions here. Notice like most debugging issues is going to be just YAML files. There's something syntactically I'm not picking up, which is weird because I know YAML really well, but I'm missing something. And we still have a problem on line 24. I hate this line 24 nonsense. I'm noticing like that these are looking a little bit different. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do this on all of these here and see if that resolves our issue. And I'm just going to keep doing this. What is its problem? There has to be something that's mucking it up. And I'm thinking it has to do with the $ double curlies, is what I'm thinking. So like, if I was to take these 3 here, or these 4 here, and dump them on the bottom, but these still need to be at the bottom because I want them to happen last, right? This is frustrating. This is really frustrating. I wish we had a better linter. What I'm going to do, I really don't have to install a linting tool here though. Can I, let's see, there's like YAML? Please tell me there's a YAML one in here. This is YAML, we'll try that. I'm hoping that like maybe it will tell us if there's something wrong. There we go, now we're getting problems. Nested mappings are not allowed in compact mappings. Nested mappings, okay. So I think it's getting confused in what is happening. I'm gonna put doubles here, I guess. And then I'm gonna try to put forward slash like that. And maybe that will fix our issue. Oh, and then it even has them over here as well. Okay, then we'll do this one. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping that fixes the issue, but let's see here. Name here, missing property uses. Why does it need uses? All right. Oh, I guess it should do something. You know what? We should say, like, I have to give it a run. So just say, we'll just say echo success or echo failure. We don't need a colon there. That makes no sense. There we go. And so maybe that will fix our issue. Expression function. I'll go ahead and commit that. And hopefully, no syntax error. Fingers crossed. There we go. It ran. We'll take a look here and we'll click into it. And you can see all of them working. So, you know, contains, start with, ends with, echo, or sorry, format, whatever. Pretty straightforward. If you want, take a closer read of that, but I'm going to call this one done. We're going to go ahead over to our actions. I'm going to go and disable this for now, and I will see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at runners. So runners determine the underlying compute and OS that the workflow will execute on. The runner can be GitHub hosted, where GitHub is providing a predefined runtime. They have standard size, which comes with Ubuntu, Windows, Mac OS. Then there's the larger size. This is only available for orgs and enterprises using GitHub Teams or GitHub Enterprise Cloud Plans, which we are not going to touch, but I just want you to know that it's there. They might even call it premium. I don't know. There's not consistency with the naming here, but it has more RAM, CPU, and disk space. And it comes with a static IP address and the ability to group runners and auto-scaling to support concurrent workflows. Then we have self-hosted. This is external compute connected to GitHub using the GitHub Actions self-hosted runner application. You create custom hardware configurations that meet your needs. This is when you'd want that. The way you specify runners is with the runs on command. If you specify an array of strings or variables, your workflow will execute on any runner that matches all of the specified run on values. Is that confusing? Yes, but apparently it works. Anyway, let's go take a look at the more direct comparison. And I don't know why this one is like that. Sometimes PowerPoint just does this to me, like this weird stuff. But let's take a look at this comparison of these two. All right, so we have GitHub hosted runners and self-hosted runners. And I'm stuck on my eraser, so let me just get back. I don't want a pointer, I just want nothing. There we go. Okay, great. So let's look at the comparison. So between setup and maintenance, GitHub hosted runners, no setup required, fully managed by GitHub. Self-hosted runners requires the manual setup maintenance because you are the one setting up the compute. The cost is free with limits on usage, charges for extra minutes. For self-hosted runners, no cost for runners, infrastructure cost applies. For scalability, GitHub hosted runners automatically scales based on demand. Self-hosted, you manage the scaling because you manage the compute. The environment controls are predefined environments for GitHub runners, but they're limited. With self-hosted runners, you can do whatever you want because you are running the compute. Guess what for OSs? You have Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. For self-hosted, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Though I think that there's probably some limitations, but because I could have swore it was like, hey, you have to do this, but it's mostly the same thing, Windows, Linux, Mac OS. But I guess the other thing is like when you're using GitHub hosted runners, it's like Linux Ubuntu, but what if you want to use a different variant of Linux? GitHub hosted runners for security, secure but runs in a shared environment, self-hosted. It's whatever you're doing because you're the one running it. Performance, fixed performance capabilities for self-hosted. It's whatever you choose it to be. GitHub hosted runners, access for internal resources, limited unless using self-hosted services. If it's self-hosted, it's in your network. You can do whatever you want. Customization is limited in the GitHub environments for GitHub hosted runners. For self-hosted, you can do whatever you want. Usage limits, there are limits and quotas. And then again, self-hosted, anything you want. So hopefully that makes it clear. Self-hosted is do what you want for the most part. Okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and in this video, we're going to take a look at GitHub hosted runners. So we're going to change it to be something that it normally isn't. Usually we use Ubuntu latest every single time. But I'm going to go ahead and press period. Before I do that, I'm going to open up Actions tab. We'll press period. And I'm going to want to copy over in here I have a Windows and a Mac one. So somewhere in here we have runner Mac OS, runner Windows, because those are two that we have yet to do. And we'll go ahead and paste them in. Lucky for you, I made sure that these work prior, but let's take a look at the Mac OS one. So here we're saying Mac OS latest. Sorry, I had a scam caller. So for Mac OS here, we can see that we are checking out a repo, we are creating a Swift file, we're installing Swift linter, and we run the Swift linter, and then we compile Swift code, because Swift is something that you would expect to be on Mac, okay? For the Windows one, we have Windows latest. I'm not sure why this is on the pull request. We'll take that off of there. It doesn't need to be on there. Not sure how that got there. And so here we're installing via Choco. Choco is like homebrew for Mac. We're installing PowerShell if it's not there. And then we have a PowerShell program. No, it's actually I don't know. We're installing. Well, I guess it's specific to Windows. So it makes sense that we would use Choco to test something here. But anyway, here we would add content. Add content. This is a .NET program. That's what I meant to say. A .NET program, and then we run it. And then over here we are using PowerShell, and they're running it. So all this stuff is very particular. The only thing that I'm noticing here that is a bit different is this here, the shell command. So I don't know if we actually ever cover that. If I haven't, I'll have to do that in a separate video. Shell GitHub command. I don't know how I missed that. But clearly that's changing the shell. So, oh yeah, I think I've actually skipped this slide for some reason. But anyway, not this in particular, but I'm thinking now that I probably missed that. You won't notice, it'll be in the course. But here it's changing the shell to be PowerShell. That makes sense. Anyway, so what we'll do is we'll bring these two over. All right, and so let's just say runners for Mac OS and Windows, and hopefully they'll work the first time around. And so we'll push that. We'll go here. So what could running Mac and Windows ones be useful for? Well, of course, if you are developing apps for either of those, but like, let's say you're building, yeah, that's what it is. Like you're compiling apps. Like maybe it could even be mobile apps, I suppose. But anyway, we will wait for those to run and see what happens, okay? All right, so let's take a look at these runs. So we have the Windows one and the Mac one. Actually, I can't tell which is which because they look very similar. Oh, this is the Windows, this is the Mac. Okay, so we'll go into here. And we'll take a look. And it's fine, it passed. Great, so you compiled it, cool. And we go into our Windows one. And so you can see that it ran, okay? So everything is good. And so that's all we want to do there. So we'll just go ahead and disable these. And that is our example for running Mac and Windows. And I will see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at self-hosted runners. We did talk about them, but we didn't talk about how we'd actually utilize them. So self-hosted runners can be physical, virtual, in a container, on-premise, in the cloud, wherever you want them to be. You can add self-hosted runners at various levels in the management hierarchy, at the repo level, the org level, the enterprise level. To set up self-hosted, you need to add a runner and install the GitHub Actions runner to connect the external compute to the self-hosted runner. So here, when you go and create one, they'll give you the steps here to do that. And so we'll have to try that out. If you want to know more about the runner itself, the GitHub Actions runner, they got a repo there. That's this nice little logo. But we'll actually take a look and see if we can make our own self-hosted runner. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and in this video, we're going to take a look at self-hosted runners. So I'm going to go over to our repo, and I feel like we're going to need compute for this one. I can't remember if I have a template for this. Let's go take a look before we jump in. And so I might have one self-hosted. I just want to see what we have in here. It's a very simple script, so yeah, it's something that we'll utilize. What I'm going to do here is go ahead to code, and we will launch up code spaces for this one, which opens up in another tab, which is nice. And we will wait for that to provision. As that is going, we'll go here to the left-hand side, and we'll go to runners. I think this wasn't here just a second ago, so maybe they just added a feature while we've been working. We go to self-runner. We can add a new runner, and we'll go here. It took us over to our settings page here in our org, and we'll go and set new. Now, I assume that this can be done at all levels. If you don't see it, then maybe it needs to be an org level. Sorry, I don't know. Anyway, the point is that I'm going to just show you how to create that self-runner, and we have a few options. We have Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. I'm going to go with Linux here today, and so the question is, can I run it in GitHub code spaces? I'd be really curious to see if that works. But what we'll do here is we'll just wait a little bit for this to provision, and we'll try it out. I'm expecting this not to work because we are in a code spaces environment. But if that doesn't work, I can always try my local machine. We'll figure something out, okay? And actually, while we're waiting for that, we could go over to the GitHub Actions runner website, GitHub Actions runner, GitHub, and maybe we can just read about it a bit. Yeah, GitHub Actions runner, the runner is an application, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just curious about the prereqs because I don't think I looked into this. So here it's supporting very specific distributions. So we have a lot of options. We have to install the .NET Core Linux dependencies. Whoa. We need a full list of dependencies. So it looks like it's pretty involved. So I'm not sure how I'm going to install this in code spaces. Also, it doesn't talk about like any kind of communicational things. The config sh will check .NET Core 3 times dependencies during the runtime. So what we'll do, we'll just try it. I'm not saying it'll work, but we'll try it, and we'll see what will happen if we go ahead and configure this. It's not that important that we get a working self-hosted runner. It's just more going through the process and learning it, okay? So if we quit here and it doesn't work, that's totally fine. So what we'll do is we'll go through each step and we'll see what happens. So the first thing is we want to make a directory. So we'll do that. And I'm just going to cd. It doesn't matter where we cd. I was thinking like we're in git pod, but we're not. Yeah, just to make it not a mess, I'll cd back one directory. All right, so we ran that line. And I'll copy the next line here and hit enter. And we'll go back over to here and I'll grab the next line, use the copy button, I guess, and hit enter. I mean, see, it's pretty straightforward. And we'll copy this one and we'll hit enter. Is that going to work? Is that going to entire? Or is this really big? Well, I guess it's working. ls. Yeah, I guess it's doing something. We'll go back here. Now we'll configure. And notice that there is a token here. So I'm assuming that's how it knows what to do is because of that token. But, you know, again, I'm going to assume that we don't have the prereqs on this machine or, connected to GitHub. There we go. Enter the name of the runner group to add this to the runner. We'll just hit enter to go to the default. Enter the name of the runner. We'll call this Enterprise, I guess. I don't know. The runner will have the following labels as the default. Add any additional labels. We'll say Enterprise. And so we enter the name of the work folder. What is the work folder? Is it where it's going to perform the work? We'll just hit enter for work, I suppose. There we go. So that is done. Okay. So we should be able to use it now. It just seems like there should be more to it, but apparently that's all we had to do. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't, I don't care. We at least saw the setup for it. So we'll go over to our GitHub Actions, and we will go into our templates, and we'll go down below to self-hosted. And this looks pretty straightforward. This is set to self-hosted. We'll go ahead and copy. Now, we could probably also put the other label there if we don't want to have self-hosted and say enterprise. I'm just going to have it as self-hosted. We'll keep it simple. And then we'll go here and paste this right in here. Paste, 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 paste. And we'll go over to here and we'll just say commit self-hosted runner. Still, I'm not sure how this would work. I feel like it can't be this easy. There's no way. It never is this easy. But I guess we'll find out. So got to get back to our repo. All right, and we'll go over to Actions, and we'll go to Commit Self-Hosted Runner, and we'll click into this. And this is usually what happens. It'll say waiting for a runner to pick up the job. And so I don't see how this could work because none of the ports are open. So I think that if the ports were open, and again, it doesn't say what ports have to be open, so I'll go ahead and say self-hosted networking runner. Like how would it, you know what I mean? Network. Yeah, so we'll go to communication between self-hosted runner. The self-hosted runner connects to GitHub to receive jobs. You must ensure the machine has appropriate network access to at least 70 kilobits. Connection between the self-hosted and GitHub has to be open on port 443. So I don't think this is going to work. But it is interesting to see that. And I think we kind of satisfied what it is that we wanted to see. You'll notice that it will never pick up the runner here. So I'm going to go cancel it out. I feel like it'd be a lot of work to get this to work on my local machine. Another thing that we could do is we could go over to, let's say, AWS or anywhere and try it there. Okay, we could do that, but then we might have to configure a bunch of stuff. So I would just say for the scope of this exam, I think that we learned what we need to know or certification. And if you really want to go full on this, you can do that. I'm just trying to make your life a bit easier here today. But I'll see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at workflow commands. So actions can communicate with the runner machine to set in Env Vars, output values used by other actions, add debug messages to the output logs and other tasks. So here is an example where we're using the run command, but what's interesting is the fact that we have this .github path, which we'll talk about next, about these special ENVs. So the idea is that we have the set Env Vars, which is if you have this GitHub env environment variable, you can add things to it, and then it'll be available in all your other steps. We have adding things to systems path, so this will be in the GitHub path. We have setting output parameters. So here, if we need to output something, then you'll see it will show up as outputs. And we have creating debugging messages, so there is that. What else do we have? We have group log messaging. We have masking values in logs. So notice we add the mask, so if it echoes out the secret, it won't show it. Stopping and failing actions, so we can tell it to error out at this step. So there you go. Hey, it's Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the workflow commands that we can utilize. I don't know if I have a script for this, but we'll hit period here and open up the GitHub examples repo I keep working with. And what we'll do is take a look here and see maybe if I have one. I could have one in here. I didn't make something for everything here. I don't think so. That's totally fine because it's our opportunity to finally create some scripts by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete these ones out of here. I'm going to make a new workflow script. I'm not going to give you this one so that you have to do a little bit of work yourself, as you should learn how to write this stuff by hand. So we'll say name, and we'll just say workflow commands. And then from there, we have, was it jobs? And we have our job. I already forgot what it's supposed to be. Jobs, yeah, the name of the job. So we'll just say my job. My job. And then we'll say runs on Ubuntu latest. So we'll try a really easy one first. And what I'm thinking here is that we can have a steps, and this will have a name. And we'll just call this group logging. We'll try this one first. So here we'll do this. If you don't know this pipe, this is when you want to have a multi-line. Each line is treated as a new line in YAML. That's not specific to GitHub Actions. It's just a YAML thing. And so we'll use this group. Say my group message. And then we'll end the group. Down below. And we'll say MSG1, MSG2. All right, so we have all of those in there. It's not runs, it's run. And so I think that this will work as our initial one. So we'll go ahead and try this and just say workflow command. Oh, we actually have to tell it how it's going to do it. So we'll go up here and just say on. And we'll just put in push here. Again, I like to use this expanded format, but not always. It doesn't always matter. So we'll go ahead and do this. And we'll just say workflow commands example. And it looks all good to me. And we'll go ahead and commit and push it. And I think I can go here. Yeah, open the repo here. We'll go over to actions. And then we'll see if that executes. Yep, did group logging. There we go. There's our group. Cool, whatever. All right, so we'll go back to here. And I'm just trying to think of ones that are actually valuable that might come up. I think like set Env Vars is a really good one to have. So what I'll do is we'll have like one step here, another step there. So this one's fine, but we'll go here and just say step 1, and then we'll have step 2. And I'm just going to clear this out and clear this out. You can always do that. Like if you always want to have it on a new line, you can always do it this way. I like to do that quite often. And we'll just say something like my val hello. And the idea is that we will then add that to the GitHub env. And so the idea is that this value, my val, should be now accessible down here. So I would imagine we could probably do echo and then say $ my val. And we'll see what happens here. So hopefully that works. But that looks fine to me. GitHub env, all spelled correctly. So we'll test in Env Var in other steps. All right, we'll commit that. Looks good. We'll go back over to here. And hopefully it works. We'll just wait for that to work. All right, so we'll click into here. And we'll go into my job. And we'll check step 1. So we shouldn't really expect to see much here. It shows that it ran that file. We'll go to step 2, and it echoes it out. So I think that is sufficient for run commands. Obviously, there is more than just those ones, like GitHub path and output and other things. But I think this is good enough. And so we'll call this one done. Okay, so I'll see you in the next one. Ciao. We are taking a look here at workflow contexts, which are a way to access information about workflow runs, variables, runner environments, jobs, and steps. Each context is an object that contains properties, which can be strings or other objects. In this example, we have a context called secrets, and it's giving us access to our sensitive variables that we want to pass to our workflow. Let's take a look at all the contexts that we have. The first being GitHub. This is information about the workflow run. We have env or environment, which is about environment variables that are available. We have vars, which are, you can think of them like environment variables, but they're variables that we were passing in to a function that might not be necessarily sensitive. We have a job, which is information about the current running job. Jobs, and this is specifically for reusable jobs or workflows, sorry. Information about steps. Runner, I'm not sure why I have a capital R in there, but it's just a runner. Secrets for secrets. Strategy for the matrix execution strategy, which we'll talk about in another video. And then matrix, which contains the matrix properties defined in the workflow. And needs. and inputs. And the difference between needs and inputs, I don't know why they don't call this one outputs, but needs is outputs and inputs are inputs. But there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at context. So what I want to do is just pull up context GitHub so you can see how you would look them up. And so here they all are. And if we want to know what we can extract out of them, let's say the GitHub one, we can click into it and it will tell us individually about the things that we can grab. So what I figured we could do is just create a context and get some information. So, I mean, that's not really one that I want. That's not a really good example, but let's go ahead and write our own file. So we actually haven't been really writing from scratch, which is really unusual for me. I usually almost do everything from scratch, but any templates for this. But I'm going to go ahead into workflow here. We'll make a new one. We'll call this one context.yaml. And in here, we'll get set up. So the first thing we'll need, not that I remember how to do things from scratch, we'll say name. I'll just call this one context examples. This will be on push. All right. And from here, we'll say jobs. And we'll just say my context doesn't really matter. And we'll say runs on, and we'll have this run on Ubuntu latest. And then we'll have steps here. And then for this, we'll just say my step. And then we'll have our run. And so the idea is that we need to get these contexts. So what I'm thinking here is, I think it's like echo, and we'll say hello world, hello, and then I think it's like curlies, and then it's GitHub dot action. So normally, like we use it in if statement here, you can see that it is used up there, but I'm just trying to think of like how we would access it down here. I'm just trying to think of like, can we do interpolation like this? Give me a moment. I'm not sure about that, but in our example, we have an env here and we set it this way. So I'm going to try that and see what happens. So what we'll do is we'll just say env. I'll just say my action. And then we will try it this way. Say github.action. And then we say my action. And we'll see if this works. Before we test that, let me just double check, make sure we got it right. There we go. And so I'm hoping that this might work. So we'll give that a go. Attempt context. Workflow. And watch, it's going to be like syntax error. We did something wrong, syntax error. I'm just always getting syntax errors, that's why. The other thing is like this one appears under the run. So I'm going to put this actually here, sorry, like in this step here. So I think this is actually correct. Yeah, stage it. Yep. And we'll do that. Did it already push it? I didn't ask it to push it. If it pushed it, it's totally fine. But we'll go here. I'm going to go into our ExamPro co-examples. And we'll go over to actions. And there's nothing in here. What? What are you talking about? I got two workflows in here. ExamPro examples. Oh, sorry. GitHub. I don't want a new action. We'll click here. And so it is attempting to run, which is good. It shouldn't take that long to run, so that's not a good sign. So we'll click into here and we'll take a look and see what is happening. Waiting for a runner to pick up this job. And so I think the issue is, yeah, if this happens and it hangs, it's because I have a problem with this. I probably made a spelling mistake. Ubuntu. That doesn't look right to me. It looks like Ubuntu. So we'll go ahead and try this again. By the way, there are questions in the exam about debugging, so that's why I leave this stuff in here, and it's just kind of sprinkled through the course. That's why I got to do all the labs. And so I'll go here, and because this has failed, we'll just cancel this workflow. It's never going to finish. And we'll go ahead and say fix the runner, and we'll go ahead and commit that. All right, and we'll go back over to here. So that one was canceled, obviously, and so hopefully this one will run. Yeah, it completed. It says, hello, underscore underscore run. I mean, that seems right to me. So I might want to pick a different context there. GitHub context. Actions, sorry. I just want to have confidence that it's 100% right here. So we'll go back into GitHub. Yes, it says for the first example, the first script you will run will have the name underscore run, and the second script will have run too. Okay, so that's probably right. The username of the user. So I'll just do one more here, just to have 100% confidence. Let's say my actor, GitHub actor, like that. I don't know if it needs spaces in between here. We'll just match the syntax. We'll just say another attempt at context. Okay, I spelled context wrong, totally fine. They don't care. And we'll wait for this to run. And it looks like it's ran. Excellent. We'll go down to here. Well, okay. I'm sure this would have worked if I actually had add the echo in there. So I'll go down here and just say, hold on. So we'll go here and just fix this. Let's just say action. And we'll say actor, my actor, like this. Should echo or should print the vars or whatever we want to call that. We'll go ahead and do that again. We'll make our way back over to here to actions, and we will wait for this to work. Okay. And so I'm going to just drop this down here. And so we have actor, run, actor. It didn't show me the name of the actor. Oh, you know what? You have to spell it right for it to work. This is frustrating. I'm so sorry. We'll try this one more time. We'll just put some stuff in there and we'll go back to here. And maybe this time it will work. So it says it's done. We'll take a look. We'll click into here. And yeah, it has my username. So that is now in great condition here. So we are in great shape. And I will see you in the next one. Before we do, sorry, I should just go ahead and we can go disable that. By the way, you can pin. I'm not sure if that ever showed up in an exam, but you can pin these workflows. Anyway, see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're looking at dependent jobs. So a workflow run is made up of one or more jobs which run in parallel by default. To run sequentially, you can define dependencies on other jobs using the jobs.needs or if. So here we have an example of us using the needs. So it says job 2 needs job 1 to complete. And then on the other side, we have the if with the need. So you use it in combination to say always, if always, which is not a really good job because that means it's always going to require that. Always needs job 1 and job 2. So there you go. All right, so in this video, we'll take a look at dependent jobs. So what we'll do, I'll open this up in a second tab, the Actions tab. We'll hit period. And I think I have a template for this one. I'm not sure. If it's not good, we can always rework it. But I think there is one here for jobs. I don't see one. That's totally fine. I don't care if we have one or not. So we'll go ahead and just make our own. So let's just say new file. I'll call this one jobs YAML. All right, and we'll just say name job dep jobs example. All right, and so this shouldn't be too complicated. We want you to say on, and we'll just make this on push as per usual. I don't know if I disable the last one. I just don't want to have a job on here and this one runs. So I'm going to disable this. There we go. Okay, so yeah, that one's disabled. We'll go back over to here, and we now need to define our job. So we have jobs, and we have job 1 and job 2. And so the idea is that job, and we'll do them out of order just so that we can see how this, if it will do this in the order that we want. So we'll do job 2 up here and job 1 down below. And then the idea is it will say needs job 1 to complete. And so now we need to put something in this. So we'll say steps. This will have steps. And do we give steps names? No, it's just that. Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and type in name, colon, we'll say step 1. And then over here, I'll just say step A and step B. Step A, step B. And this will just be run, and this will just be echo. Hello. And this one will be world. And so, well, this one's the first step. So I'm going to call this one hello, and this one world. And so that should be okay. I'm not sure why it's giving me a problem here. Runs on. Oh, yes, runs on. So this would be within the job, runs on Ubuntu latest. And then this one would be down below here. So let's go ahead and give that a test. So jobs workflow example. And we will push that. We will make our way over to here, and hopefully we don't have any issues. So we'll wait for that to see if it works. There we go. And so that one has completed, but did it do in the order that we want? Job 1 to job 2. So notice that it's showing the relationship between it. So that is really cool. I like that. So that is nice. Now the question is, if we didn't have that depends, so we see this visual with this pipe in between, but if we didn't have that depends, what would we see, right? That's the question. So go ahead and do this and try again without the depends. Okay, and just remember what this looks like, job 1 to job 2, and then we'll go back to actions here, and we'll take a look and see what happens. And notice now they're just kind of grouped together. We'll let it finish and see what happens. There we go, okay, and so, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. So you get kind of a visual thing, and I suppose that could get pretty complex depending on what your setup looks like, but I'd say that is good enough for now, and I'm going to go ahead and just disable this. And I will see you in the next one, okay? Ciao. Hey, it's Andrew Brown, and we are talking about encrypted secrets. So encrypted secrets are variables that allow you to pass sensitive information to your GitHub Action workflows. Secrets are accessed via the secrets context. So that's secrets dot, and then whatever you want your secret is. And it has a few different levels. We have the organizational level, the repo level, and the environment level. What you need to understand is that the lower the level, the more it overrides the ones from the top level. So if you have a secret called hello at the organization level and one at the environment level called hello, the one at the environment level value will overtake. Secret names can only contain alphanumeric characters, underscores, no spaces. So that example there would be the case. You can't prefix it with GitHub in all caps with an underscore. Names must start with numbers. Sorry, I felt like a rumble in my office, and that's why I paused. I think there was just a big train that went by. Anyway, sorry about that. There we go. Names are case insensitive. Names must be unique at the level they are created at. People don't know I live right beside a train station, and my office is in a shed behind my house. And the idea is that I have multiple layers to avoid from the train, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. But anyway, so we have passing secrets as inputs. So you can pass secrets as inputs by using secrets context. So that is an example there. But I mean, like, the point is that, you know, you could interpolate whatever you want there to pass it into a custom action. And we'll talk about custom actions in another video. You can pass secrets as Env Vars. So that is another way that you could do that. And why would you do inputs versus Env Vars? It just really depends on your use case. So maybe you have something that is a program you're using and it can only use Env Vars. Whereas with secrets, it's okay to do that on the left-hand side because of the way it works. But I just want to point out here, we did this in another video, but if you want to make that an Env Var, you'd have to map it like that. I think we did that for something earlier, but hopefully you know what that is. So about how you set a secret. So you can use the GitHub CLI. So we have a GH secret set, which is probably how we're going to do it. Then we have GH secret set for a specific environment or at the org level. So depending on how you do a flag, it's going to be different. The default apparently is repository. And you can also specify the repo, which we have here. You could do that up here as well if you want to. But there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at configuration variables. These are variables that allow you to store non-sensitive information to your GitHub Actions workflow. So it's basically the same thing as secrets, except it's for non-sensitive information. It uses the vars context. So it's going to have very similar structure. We have organization level, repo level, and environment level secrets. And as per usual, lower levels override the higher level ones. I wrote secrets in here, but I meant to write in right here vars, or configuration variables, because it basically has the exact same settings. What's different is the CLI command. So here you can see, well, let's get variable set. I guess it's the same as secrets. You're just supplying the word variable instead of secret. At the time of this, it says that this is a preview feature. I guess that they might release it out, but I'm putting it in here because it seems like something that would happen in the future. And there is a lot of content that is preview but shows up on the exam. So I imagine preview means they intend to release it. So it's in here, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at default Env Vars. So Env Vars obviously stands for environment variables. These are ones that are going to be set for you by GitHub that you can access within your environments, in your workflows. So we have CI, the GitHub Actions, the GAT actors, a bunch of these ones, a bunch of those ones. And you get the idea. These are pretty straightforward, but I just want to show you how many there are. And then we show an example of how you would go and access those. And we already do use some of them in the course, so it's pretty straightforward what those are, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's take a look here at setting custom Env Vars. So you can define environment variables in line with your GitHub Actions workflow. So you can set them at the workflow level, the job level, and the step level. When I took the exam, they didn't call the top level work level or workflow level, even though that's what the docs called it. In fact, they gave me a multi-select where the three choices for the top level or workflow level was top level, runner level, or environment level. So I'm just going to tell you that the exam can be really frustrating, and so you just have to take your best guess. And even I can't figure it out, so it's just the nature of the way GitHub writes their exams. Maybe it'll improve in the future. Notice that if we are using bash with Linux, we're just calling the environment variables because they're now available. So hopefully that is clear. You can also use env context. So let's say you had to make an if statement, you could access it that way. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We are still taking a look here at setting Env Vars, but this time it's with workflow commands. So you can dynamically set Env Vars during the execution of your workflow using GitHub env. So the idea is that you will pass the values you want. I'll just get my pen tool so it's very clear. But notice using echo, you're going to make a string, and you're going to set the environment variable and the value you want, and then you're going to send it over to here, and then you'll be able to access it other places. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We are taking a look at the GitHub token secret. So at the start of each workflow job, GitHub automatically creates a unique GitHub token secret to use in your workflow. You can use the GitHub token to authenticate in the workflow job. Sounds a bit repetitive there, but let's take a look here and see what we're talking about. So I'm gonna get my pen tool out so it's very clear. And what I want you to see is that we can say secrets.github token, and we can get that GitHub token. I also believe that we can do $ GitHub token for environment variables, and it will show up as well. If not, we can just map it over as we are doing here. If you notice here, we're doing that. When you enable GitHub Actions, GitHub installs a GitHub app on your repository. The GitHub token secret is a GitHub app installation access token. So hopefully that is clear. You can also use it with the REST API. So here's another example. And notice we are calling secrets GitHub token with this way of interpolating that. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's take a look at how we'd run a script in a workflow. When we're talking about scripts, I'm talking about things like bash scripts. I suppose if this was PowerShell and we're using Windows, we could probably do that as well, but I'm going to use the Linux example here. But notice here that we have a job. We're going to run this on Ubuntu. We have a default over here of setting our run to the working directory of scripts. So in our repo, we have a scripts directory, and in there we have bash scripts. And so the idea is that we can just execute them and they'll run. And I just want to point that out, that you can run bash scripts, and that will save you time from writing a lot of inline code here. So that's about it, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's take a look at what it looks like to publish a GitHub package using a workflow. So you can use a workflow to build a GitHub package. So all I'm going to do is get my pen tool out here so we can understand what is going on. On the exam, they might ask you like what things you have to do in order to build a GitHub package. They're not going to ask you like, what's wrong with this? Why isn't this working? There's like next to no troubleshooting on the exam, even though the exam guide asks you a bunch for it. But if we look at this here, okay, so notice that we're going to set in our environment a registry, environment variables for the registry and the image name. So those are two things that we'll set here. And then we have our job. So we have a few steps. First thing we'll have to do is check out a repository. Okay, and notice that this one, it is utilizing Docker and it's using the Docker login actions. This is something that absolutely I saw in my exam, which was they're like, which action can you use to check out your repo specifically for GitHub packages? And it was this, which seems like a very random thing to remember, but that's what it wanted. Notice we have the with. Remember, with is a way to input things into an action. So we're providing the registrar, the username, and the password. Then the next step is extracting metadata, tags, and labels. All right. And notice we have the Docker meta actions action there. So make sure you remember that one. Then down below, we want to build and push. So we have the Docker build and push actions. All right. So what you want to remember is the order of these things and what the actions are. I don't like that as an exam question, but that is the kind of exam questions they want to test you on. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at how to publish a Docker registry to Docker registry using a workflow. And again, the reason I'm bringing these up is because on the exam, they might ask you the order and the general idea of how these things work. This one is more just to kind of reinforce the last one, which is for publishing to GitHub packages, but you'll notice that they are using the same action. This one's Docker login action, Docker metadata action, Docker push action. So understand that it's push. It's like log into Docker, extract your metadata, build and push. So, similar steps. Hopefully that helps reinforce that. Okay. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's take a look at what it looks like to publish to GitHub Container Registry using workflow. Again, this might appear on your exam where they're asking the order of steps and what is happening. Let's take a look at what we have. So we have Docker login action, so build and publish. We have the push actions. And then down below, I guess you can pull it to verify. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I'm just again showing you the repetition of those things. So it should be pretty clear the steps involved, but there you go. Let's talk about publishing components as a GitHub release. They talk about components. They don't make it really clear what they're talking about. So I had to take my best guess here. The exams did not tell me otherwise, but let's just take a look at what we have here. So the idea is that we are building a project of some kind of component or code. We create our release, and then we push our release, because we can do releases, and usually releases have something to do with components. And so I'm thinking that this is what they want you to know, is how to actually create a GitHub release, okay? So these are the two things, and that's pretty straightforward. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We're looking at how you deploy a release to a cloud provider. So you can specify releases out to specific cloud service providers with GitHub. They have a few. They have Amazon Elastic Container Service, Google's Kubernetes engine, and then quite a few Azure services, which makes sense because GitHub is owned by Microsoft, so they're going to have the most synergies for them. And this example in particular is showing you for a static web app. I don't remember them ever asking on the exam anything about like actually being able to do this. And there is a bunch of variety of ways of doing this. So if you did get a question, it'd be quite unfair because you'd have to cover every single scenario. But it's just worth noting that you can do this, and they have direct integrations for these particular services. So I just wanted to make that clear, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at service containers. So service containers are Docker containers that provide a simple and portable way for you to host services that you might need to test or operate your applications in a workflow. You can configure service containers for each job in a workflow. GitHub creates a fresh Docker container for each service configured in the workflow and destroys the service container when the job completes. Steps in a job can communicate with all service containers that are part of the same job. However, you cannot create and use service containers inside a composite action. If your workflow uses Docker container actions, job containers, service containers, then you must use a Linux runner. If you are using GitHub hosted runners, you must use an Ubuntu runner. If you are using a self-hosted runner, you must use a Linux machine as your runner, and Docker must be installed. You can configure jobs in a workflow to run directly on a runner machine or in the Docker container. So if you're running jobs in a container, using Docker with bridge mode is what you'll end up utilizing. If it's on a runner, it'll be host mode. They'll never ask you this on the exam, but it's just practical knowledge. Understand if it's in host mode, you'll have to map the ports. So let's look at an example of a Redis container, which is a service. And notice that this one, we specify the image over here. Notice the container job specifies a specific type of container. So we have the runner, the type of container that it'll run, which is node. Over here, this one, notice there is no specified container. So this is the key difference between being able to tell if something is running in a container or on the host image, because this one has no container and you're mapping a port, and this one you are not mapping a port, but you are specifying the container. Okay, here is a more complex example. So you can specify credentials for your service containers in case you need to authenticate with an image repo. So notice that under here we are providing our credentials. So hopefully that is clear. When running a Postgres server as a service container, it is going to look like this. You can tell that it has a container. It's pretty darn straightforward. If we take a look at what it looks like to connect to a service container, in an additional step here, we are running our client.js. We're providing the Env Vars, and then over here we have our code. So we will definitely run this one as an example, so you have practical skills on how to run a service container. But yeah, there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at routing workflows to runners. So a self-hosted runner automatically receives certain labels when it's added to GitHub Actions. What are labels? It's these things over here on the right side of the runs on. And we have default labels. These are used to indicate its operating system and hardware platform. So we have self-hosted if we're specifying the default label for self-hosted, and we have the one specific for operating system like Linux, Windows, Mac OS. We can also have ones that are specifying x64, ARM, or ARM64 architecture. And you can have custom labels. This is where you basically define whatever you want the label to mean, and they're going to map to a type of runner. I should point out that these runners are cumulative, so a self-hosted runner must have all four labels, in like that example, to process that job. So let's talk about runner groups. So these are used to collect sets of runners and create a security boundary around them. Enterprise accounts, orgs owned by enterprise accounts and orgs using GitHub teams can manage and use additional runner groups. And so here's an example of us specifying a group under a runs on. So that should be pretty straightforward. You can also combine labels and groups together to narrow things down a bit further. So hopefully that makes sense, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay, ciao. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at executing CodeQL step. This appears in the exam guide, but I didn't get a question on it, but I imagine that they just want you to know that you can execute CodeQL. CodeQL is something we cover in the GitHub security certification course, which can perform an analysis, but what you want to notice is that there is an action called CodeQL Action Analyze, and that's going to let you work with your CodeQL. You can also, we have the initialize action. So those are really the two things that they want you to know if they were to ever ask you a question. And the fact that you can use CodeQL steps within workflows, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we are taking a look at caching, package, and dependency files. So to make your workflows faster and more efficient, you can create caches for dependencies and other commonly used files. And so workflows run often reuse the same outputs and download dependencies from one into another. So wouldn't it be awesome if we could cache those? So caching, package, and dependency management will greatly improve your performance. And you can you can cache the following for package managers. It says package manages, and that's what threw me off. It's supposed to say managers here. Okay, managers. And so we have for a few, we have npm for Python, for Gradle, for Ruby Gems, for Go. So here's an example. If there was a question they'd ask on the exam, they're asking what is that you would use here. So notice here it says Ruby setups Ruby. They're asking you, what is the thing that you would use that would create this caching to be performed? And that's all you really need to know is like setup Ruby, setup Go, setup Java. Just remember setup hyphen something when they're talking about package manager. Even if we did this, it's not that easy to observe to see that the caching is occurring other than it is performing quickly. But yeah, there you go. Hey, it's Andrew Brown, and let's take a look here at caching job dependencies and build outputs. So we have this action, get my pen tool out here, called caches, or cache, actions cache. And the way it works is you provide an ID, okay, and then you can provide it values like the path and the key you want to have here. And then down below, notice that we can reference the ID from up here, and then we can grab the outputs, and then we can check whether there was a cache hit. And then the idea is that we are able to then grab that value out later on. And so that's a great way if you're going to utilize the same value in more than one place. So you notice we're using here and there. I do want to point out that there is also individualized actions. So if you want to use the save and restore action separately, you absolutely can do that as opposed to just using the cache's value there. But hopefully that is clear how we can cache job dependencies and build outputs. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's take a look at removing workflow artifacts from GitHub. So the way you do that is in the UI, you can press a button and delete it. Once you delete an artifact, it cannot be restored. By default, GitHub stores build logs and artifacts for 90 days, and the retention period can be customized. So that's something that they want you to know. I never saw it on my exam. I never needed to delete an artifact, but that is an option there. Actually, I do remember them asking about like retention periods. So something like 90 days is something that you would absolutely want to know. They might also ask you something like practical, like what would you do if you ran out of space? You just delete the artifacts. But there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at workflow status badges. You can display a status badge in your repo to indicate the status of a workflow. And this is what this badge looks like. You've probably seen it before. And the way it works is that they have a special URL here that you can place in your README file, and then that way you can see it. There are some parameters that you can provide, like branch feature, event push. Workflow badges in a private repo are not accessible externally, so you won't be able to embed them or link them from an external site. I never got any questions on this in the exam, but it is in the exam guide outline, so there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at environment protection. So you can configure environment with protection rules and reference an environment in your workflow job. So each job in a workflow can reference a single environment. Any protection rules configured for an environment must pass before a job referencing the environment is set to a runner. The job can access the environment secrets only after the job is set to a runner. And there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We're taking a look at job matrix configuration. A matrix strategy lets you use variables in a single job definition to automatically create multiple jobs runs that are based on combinations of variables. So here's an example of a matrix with versions and OSs, and they'll produce that amount. So basically you'll end up with 6 job runs. So there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. Let's compare the difference between disabling versus deleting a workflow. So when you disable, you temporarily stop it. When you delete it, it is gone. Disabling, you can reverse it. Deleting, you cannot. When it's disabled, the idea here is you might do this when you need to do updates or maintenance, or you don't want the workflow to trigger as often. Deleting is you just want it gone. You can disable a workflow using the GitHub CLI. You can only delete the workflow through the UI. I did get an exam question about like disabling workflows, and the particular thing was, why would you want to do it? And main reasons is this box here. They might word it differently, but the idea is that updates are maintenance, or you just don't want it to trigger as often. But there you go. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We're taking a look at action types for actions. So there are 3 kinds. We have Docker container, JavaScript, and composite actions. And depending on what kind you're using, it's going to limit the types of OSs you can use. If you're using Docker container, you're limited to Linux. For the rest, it's all the same. If you're wondering what the 3 action types are, a Docker container runs your action code in a Docker container. If it is JavaScript, it's going to run directly on the runner host OS. If it's a composite action, this is a combination of multiple workflow steps within one action. Actions require a metadata file to define the inputs and outputs and the main entry point of your action, which we'll look at next. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at inputs and outputs for actions. So for inputs, this is what we would define that we'd expect our action to accept. And then for outputs, this is what we define, what we'd expect our action to output back for people to utilize. And if we want to specify what kind of action type we're using, we use the using command. And so you can see here that this one is JavaScript because it's using Node.js, and the main is main.js. It's a JavaScript file. If this was a Docker file, then you'd expect it to accept, it'd be using Docker, it would expect a Docker file. So hopefully that is clear. And obviously, if it's not any of those two, then it's going to be a composite. Hey, this is Andrew Brown. We're taking a look at action versions. So GitHub recommends some strategies that you should apply when you are trying to release an action for public use. The general recommendations is patch version to include necessary critical fixes, security patches, while still remaining compatible with existing workflows. Consider releasing a new major version whenever your changes affect compatibility. Tell your users to specify a major version when using your action, and only direct them to a more specific version if they encounter issues. So here's an example of if you have your actions and you're utilizing them with proper recommendations. We can specifically talk about tagging recommendations. So the idea here is they say to create and validate a release on a release branch. Before creating the release tag, create a release using semantic versioning. Move the major version tag to point to the Git reference of the current release. Introduce a new major version tag for changes that will break existing workflows. And major versions can be initially released with a beta tag to indicate the status, for example, V2 beta. So the exam did ask me about like best practices, not exactly around this, but this is something you should know, and it was in the exam guide, so you could get it as a question. Understand that exam is going to just want to know best practices, so anything you can find about best practices, read up on, as it wasn't definitively defined in the docs, and I just had to like read a lot of stuff and then, you know, take my best guess on some questions because the docs just do not answer that stuff, okay? Let's talk about how we would structure our actions, whether they're JavaScript or Docker. I don't really get into composite, but the reason you need to know these structures is that it might ask you on the exam about key files to make custom actions. So the idea is that you have a directory structure. The repository should contain a root directory named after your action or something meaningful. So hopefully that is clear. So notice here that your repo is named after your action. And that is one of the components to an action name. The other part is obviously the tag, as you've been using these actions. You've probably seen that commonly there before. Here on the right-hand side is our action, action.yaml. Notice it has our inputs and our outputs that are run. We already talked about those previously, so you should have an idea what those are. Let's talk about essential files. So you have to have an actions YAML file with the inputs, outputs, and main entry defined. The main entry here would be here, the main, okay? In JavaScript, you'd have to have an index.js, though I imagine you could probably change the name of it, but that's what it expects it to be. You have to have a package.json. And if there was a package.json, you would know that this is a custom action. I got a question on my exam saying, like, how do you know that this action is a it's JavaScript action? Because it has a package.json in it. which is not a really good answer, but it's the answer that they probably wanted. And you have to have a README to know how it works. If we're looking at a Docker container, looks very similar. Notice that we have, we're specifying the Docker file in Docker, and we can pass it some args. Notice that it has an entry point sh, and it has a Docker file. So remember those two things, as they asked me that on the exam as well, and that will get you another point, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're looking at exit codes for GitHub Actions. You can use exit codes to set status for an action. The first here would be with a bash script. The second would be using a Docker file. Why would you want to set exit codes? And the reason why is that you can then raise your own errors that you want to have. So notice here, so it says use the exit codes to set the status of an action. So the idea is that let's say we hit a 0 or whatever, then we can return back an echo of that and then provide that exit status code. Again, the point is to use it programmatically in other cases, and so that's all I wanted to show you here, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and I have a weird little glitch in my slide. This word's showing up. It's not supposed to be there yet. I can't seem to fix it. Let's talk about reusable templates. Workflow templates in an enterprise is an enterprise feature that allows you to create reusable templates that other enterprise members can use. Users with write access to the enterprise.github repo can create workflows with workflow templates. You need to create a workflow file and metadata file in your public git.github repo within a directory called workflow templates. The workflow YAML file and metadata JSON file need to have the same name. So here, it's not clicking. Here we go. So here's an example of the workflow file, and here's an example of the metadata file, so you have an idea of the relationship together. I'm not going to do a lab on this because the enterprise account requires you to get a trial. You have to enter a credit card and stuff like that, and the only way you'll be able to do that is to go through that process, and I don't think that's really fair. I don't feel that the exam is going to really test you deeply on its implementation. So I'm hoping that this will be clear. I did get questions about reusing templates, but the language they use about workflow templates and reusable templates is varies, and that makes it hard to know if this is what they're talking about. So if they're probably talking about reusing something, they're probably talking about workflow templates. And the key part to know is that they go into that .github directory, all right, and they have a metadata JSON file, okay. Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and we're taking a look at configuring self-hosted runners for enterprise. So self-hosted runners for GitHub Enterprise have additional configuration options that you're going to want to know. The first is the proxy server. So this allows you to set Env Vars within your environment to tell it to tell the environment to proxy to this secure virtual machine or compute that allows you to then communicate out. And so you can actually provide multiple URLs if you want. You can even tell it what not to use using the no proxy. All of these can be set, mix, and match. The other thing is that you're allowed to do IP allow lists. In fact, you have to do IP allow lists in order for self-hosted runners to communication to work. That is absolutely an exam question. In fact, they might even ask you exactly how to configure it, which to me was kind of ridiculous because I couldn't find an easy way to do it because I'd have to make an enterprise account. And then even then, it's even harder to even set up self-hosted runners. Like I didn't even do it in this course because it was just way too much work to do. But I just want you to know that read up a little bit about how IP allow lists configuration works, but know for sure that you have to have them configured because that will be an exam question, okay? Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this follow along, I want to take a look at how we can go ahead and create our own GitHub action. So I've yet to do this. I read all about it. And so I'm going to work with you together and we will troubleshoot through it. I'm very confident that I can get one working. And they don't look particularly too difficult to do. But we have our GitHub examples repo. We're probably going to need another repo for this. What I'm going to do is just go look up GitHub Actions custom, and we'll just kind of follow through it and then come up with our own action that we might want to create, or just work with the one that they have. So under here, there's a few different kinds that we can create. We can create a Docker one or a JavaScript one. So maybe we'll do a JavaScript one first because that might be easier to do. And so I guess they have an example one that we can utilize before you begin, download Node.js and stuff like that. Let me just read a little bit ahead and then guide you through it, okay? All right, so the first thing is that they're suggesting that there's a GitHub Actions toolkit, which is going to speed things up. Let's open up that repo and take a look at what we have. I'm going to scroll on down below. Provides a set of packages to make creating actions easier. So we got the core package, the executive package, the glob package, a lot of interesting packages here. So, I mean, that is good. And now that I'm thinking about it, I remember it actually asking about whether the core package was an important package and the GitHub package was important to have within your action. So look out for that on the exam. But yeah, you can see these are all individualized packages. And then down below it says illustrates how do you create a simple hello world action. So yeah, that looks pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a new repo. And you have to do this as well, right? So I'm just going to go up here. It'll say make a new repo. And this one I'm going to make under my own personal account. And I want this action to be called something like hello Mars or Barsoon. I think it's Barsoon. Barsoom. If you don't know, Barsoom is the word for Mars in the John Carter sci-fi books, okay? Barsoom. So I'm going to call this Barsoom, and it is available. And I suppose I can make this a public repo, and I'm going to say add this README file. And this is going to be JavaScript, so I'm just going to type in JavaScript or Node.js. Node. There we go, Node. And I'll just choose a license. We'll just say Apache 2. I don't care what happens to this repo. And so we now have this repo. The next thing I'm going to do is press period to open this up so we have something to work with. I remember from my research that we need to have an index.js file. So let's go ahead and add that. All right, I'm just jumping in this without reading too much, but I'm pretty confident. And so they have this very simple hello world example. Sure. Okay. But this is kind of what I was expecting is like, okay, do we need the actions core in here? I'm not sure. But, and then that, I guess that would get the input, but then but you have to get the input from the core. So I'm thinking the first thing we probably have to do is import our core. That's probably what has to happen. Okay, and then I would imagine that you would want to get an input like who you're greeting. That kind of makes sense to me. And you probably want to print that out. So in theory, this looks like what you'd want it to do. There's no outputs here. Maybe there's like a core.get output. So we could probably just go and investigate these individually. Let's open this one up. And yeah, let's look for output. Yeah, there's like a set output, so we could go here, right? And I'll just put name. We'll keep this simple, name. And name. And then here we'd have name from Barsoon. All right, and so maybe that's our output value. So I'm gonna go here and just say const output value, and we'll do that. And then here we'll just say greeting, and then this would be our output value. So in theory, that's one of the most simplest ways we could do this. We'll also need an action or an action YAML, and we need to define our inputs and our outputs, and I believe how it runs. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go find those references. So yeah, I just scrolled on down here to the metadata file, and so yeah, it has a description. We can just grab this one. So it's pretty close to it. And we'll just say name. So just say name. We'll say Barsoom. And actually, we just take this part out here. That way, the idea is it's defaulting to that. And then I guess time could be an output if you wanted to do that. I would just say greeting. We'll just change it to what we want it to be. How we greeted you. Okay, and then we could see our runtime is using Node, like we have Node there, right? And then we have our main. So that is pretty clear. We probably should tell people how to use this, but we will proceed forward here. And so they're suggesting we install those two, and that's what I thought that would be. And again, on the exam, those are two I noticed that were grouped together, and so I imagine that's what we need. So I can't proceed any further here. I'm going to have to open this up in GitHub Codespaces. Just say initial files. All right, and we will commit that. And then we will go back here to go to the repository, and we'll open this up in GitHub Codespaces. I'll see you back here in just a moment. All right, so our environment is up. I'm going to go ahead and just change the theme here. All right, so my theme is changed, and we will go into our index.js. There's a couple things we wanted to install. I'm just going to bump this up a little bit, and we'll go back over to here. And so we need to do the npm install actions core. I would imagine that we want to generate out a package JSON file, so we'll go ahead and do that right now. And then I'm just going to go ahead and install these. It doesn't say this, but I'm going to just put in save because we actually want to have it in our package JSON, and that's usually what you do if you want to add them in there. And we'll do GitHub, so we have those two in there. I'm going to go to the top here. Whoops, I'm going to go to the top here. And I want to include both the core and the GitHub. It's kind of driving me crazy, so you don't need to do this. You shouldn't do this if you are not a Vim user. But I'm just going to install Vim here just so I have Vim keys so I can code a little bit faster. Okay, so just give me a second. There we go. So my cursor is a little bit different looking there. I'm noticing here that they're wrapping everything in a try, so we probably should do that as well. Because then if there is an error, it has an opportunity to return an error. All right, and so notice it's using the core set failed, and then it does there. So I guess that's the case. That it's that. I wonder if there'd be like a set success, but I don't think so. And then I imagine the bulk of our code here should go into this one. All right, looking good. They also do in here the output time, and I guess we could do that. I don't think there's anything interesting about that because it's just using regular JavaScript, so we'll just ignore that. Then they want us to create a README, so I'm going to go ahead and grab theirs as an example. And we'll go over here, and I'll paste this in. All right, and it's pretty much the same, except ours is going to be name. And this one is Barsoom. Okay, I'm assuming, what is that, like the Shah or something? Because usually it's a tag, and I imagine that here we could provide something else. So I'm not exactly sure what this is. I'm sure we'll figure this out in just a moment. Okay, there's nothing that says what that is. But I'm assuming that's maybe like the SHA or the tag. So it goes, okay, so GitHub downloads each time you run the workflow during, etc. That's fine. But I guess the question is like, do we need to put anything else in here? Because I'm not sure if these are just going to work. Right? Maybe they will, but I thought we'd have to configure something additional. So what I'll do is they must have like an example repo. It doesn't seem like they do. No, not really. So maybe that will just work. I just keep expecting there to be something more, but maybe there's not. All right, let me just read a bit. I don't know, so there's not really anything interesting there that they're saying. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go and commit this. I'll just say initial version. We did install those packages, so that is good. I actually didn't test it to see if this works. And so the question is actually, how would you test this out? Because if I tried to do this right now, and actually that was a question on the exam, was like, how would you test your JavaScript thing? And I thought maybe like within a container. Let's see what happens. npm start, what would happen here? And if we go here, missing script start. So there is no start script here. How would it even know to run? That's a good point. So I think that's what I should find out next is like, how do we actually test this? So I did some research and basically people said, just mock it out with a mocking library. And I'm like, that's really how you test it? And then here they're just saying, go run it. Like they say, yeah, just go make it and then run it. And that also seems a little bit silly to me as well. But I guess what they're saying is maybe make it a private repo and then test it that way. So yeah, I would just say that I find that a little bit disappointing, but I guess that's the way that they would suggest it. But anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and commit this. Let's say initial version. And it says this to tell us to tag it. So I guess I'll do that. I'll say git tag 0.0.1 because this isn't a proper version. And we'll say git push, and we'll say git push tags. And so now we have a tagged version. So now what I want to do is I want to figure out how we can actually run this. So I'm going to go back to GitHub examples. I'm going to hit period. I'm going to see if I can actually reference that somehow. So yeah, like now how do we reference it? They really don't make this easy. So public actions can be used by workflows in any repo. When an action is in a private repo, the repo setting determines who can do it. So copy the following YAML file into a new .github YAML. Uses the octocat, etc. line 1. So I'm thinking that maybe I just give it my URL and it'll work. I'm not sure why that has a V in front of it, as that wouldn't be considered semantically correct by the semantic versioning, which is they said that that's what they use. But maybe not all of them are semantically correct, and it's just a recommendation. So what we're going to do here, I'm just going to take these ones out of here and drag them over to here. Yeah, I don't care. Cancel. I don't want to replace that one. Or I'll just delete them out. Just delete these. And I'm just going to make a new one here called custom action. YAML. And then we'll go grab their example code from over, where is it? Here. So I'll just grab this one, paste it in. I'm going to tweak this for mine. So mine is Omen King, and I'm at Barsum, and I'm at 01001. That's what I would expect that would work. Then we'll say name, and I'll just say Brown. It's weird that we set a default, but it's required. So I guess it was, I don't know. Get the output, and we'll just say output greeting. It says steps hello. Is that the name of our... How would it know that that's the step? Oh, maybe it's based on whatever we named it up in here. This is my job. Say hello. Use the output from the hello step. Oh, the ID is right here. That's how it knows. Okay, great. So let's see if this works. If it doesn't, that's totally fine. We'll figure it out. But custom action. I'm just seeing if it'll pick it up from a public repo. That's what I'm curious. Okay, so I don't want to install anything. It's totally fine. We're going to go to the repo, and then we'll go to the Actions tab, and then we'll see what's happened. There we go. We have our failure. So let's go and take a look. What is its problem? So this is where I thought I was going to run into an issue where it's not going to be able to work with that import action, because this usually uses a more advanced syntax. So cannot use import statement outside of module. Oh, were we supposed to modularize this? So I think what I might want to do is just look at an example. So example, custom action, JavaScript, and then we can maybe reverse engineer one that way. Oh man, they keep bringing me back to here. This is no good. Maybe there's like the GitHub Marketplace actions, and then we can just find one that's open source. Post installed. Maybe this one. How is this action used? I just wanted to know, like, how do you include it? It's over here. And so I'm just looking for one. I think this is probably Docker one. Yeah, this one builds with a Docker, so that's not going to help us. Let's try Superlinter as an example one. So we'll go here. And this one's a Docker file. I'm guessing lots of people don't like using JavaScript. How about this one? How about this one? How about this one? One of these are going to be JavaScript, right? They can't all be Docker files. This one is a Docker one. This one is this one looks like JavaScript. This one's JavaScript. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is go into the index.js. I'm just curious. What the heck? I want to be up here. Index. Oh, you know, it's not showing it to me here. Maybe it gets compiled out. So we'll go to source. Yeah, it's a TS file. All right, this is not helpful because it's a TypeScript one. All right, let's try this one. Yeah, Docker file. Let's try this one. This one looks like JavaScript, but it looks like it's TypeScript again. What is with people's obsession with TypeScript? I just want to import this. All right, so give me a second. I'll figure it out. You know, I was just thinking that we could just probably change this to be requires and it would still work. Also, this is supposed to be GitHub. We don't even use that in there, so we could just probably take that out. But, well, in case it wants it. But I think we could just do the requires on this. So require, would this work? Actions, core. I always forget how to do this, so. And it would be like constant core. And then constant GitHub. And maybe be fine with that. Oh, okay. I'll fix it then. I don't care. Convert it. Oh, come on. What is it? What is it that I need to do here? Let's go back here. Cannot use import statement outside of module. All right, whatever. I'm just going to go ask ChatGPT. It's one of those days. What do you want me to do? Just tell me how to fix it. That's probably what it is. I need to add type module to my package JSON because I remember that was something I had to do before in another project. I'm going to go over there and see if that makes any difference. So we'll try this again. Type module like that. Why doesn't it like it? Type module. Okay, and we will minor change. I'm going to go ahead and tag this. It's fine, go push it. I'm going to tag this with 0.2 and push. I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to change this to 2. Try new version. And we'll see if this fixes our problem. So I'm going to go back over to here to actions. And we'll see if that works. All right, let's investigate and see what our issue is here. That's not what we wanted. Okay, so I'll go back to wherever this was. Let's change it back to this. What a mess. We'll just go here. Change it back. We'll commit it here. Yeah, just commit it, sync it. Sync it, push it, stop telling me what's wrong with nothing. And we'll tag this like that. We'll do this. We'll go back over to here. We'll try this again. We'll have a new version. And we'll see if this one takes effect, okay? So we'll go back to here. And we'll see if this one fails. All right, so this one failed as well, of course. Let's take a look and see what it says. Probably the same thing. Right. Cannot find package actions core imported. Man, this is a pain. Let's go back over to here. I mean, they're in our lock files. So what else would it want? I mean, we don't use the GitHub one. I don't think that's what it's complaining about. So I guess I'll go read the docs more. All right, so here they're saying for us to use this tool to compile the node modules. Let's go ahead and see what that does. So install that. And then we'll grab this one. Our license isn't called license.txt, but I don't care. And so now we have a node modules. And we have a bunch of stuff in here, but wouldn't that then bring all that stuff there? Does that mean that when we look at other actions, they include their node modules? So I know we were just looking at one, maybe it was like superlinter. Okay, if we go to this one, does it have a node modules in here? I don't see it in here. Is this a Docker file? So we got to find another one that has node modules. What a pain in the butt. I am not enjoying making my own action just because like I feel they could provide a little bit more information than they are. So I'm just going to open a few here and we'll see what we can find. We'll try this one here. This one looks like JavaScript, yeah. Just going to go into here for a second. This is a composite one. Runs Node.js. It has a main.js. Notice there's like a post action here. How would it know to build it? Like, is this in a source directory? This is what I understand is like this one has a source directory. There's no index.js in this one, so it clearly is compiling it. But then I guess there's releases over here. So what does it want? It doesn't tell you. I'm gonna have to go research this. I'll be back. All right, so I think the problem is that this creates a distribution directory, and we don't see it because our git ignores is excluding it. So I'm thinking that if we go in here and look for the dist directory, maybe that will, there we go. Now we have this directory, and there now we have our single, because they said they would compile into a single file. I'm not seeing it in here, but it was saying that it did. Well, anyway, I don't know, but I definitely know that's what it's suggesting there. So try this again. Try again. And hopefully that will work. It's just frustrating because I watched a bunch of different videos and like they don't cover all these parts, or they're using TypeScript. And so there's other things that are, oh, I didn't tag it right. I bet they're just tagged wrong. Oh no, it might be fine. We'll try this again. I'll just do 0.5 here. And we'll do git push tags. But anyway, we'll see if this works. I'm always good at figuring things out. But let's go ahead and try this, and we'll just try the newest version. We'll commit this and push this. And we'll go back here, and we'll see if hopefully we get a different error. Okay, that's what I'm hoping for. But I still don't understand. I didn't see that package JSON anywhere in there compiled to 1. So it makes me think this still won't work. Probably going to say the same thing, isn't it? Couldn't find it. Okay, well, let's go back here for a moment. And so here it says, use the vercel command, compile your index.js file. You'll see a new index.js file with your code and compiled modules. You'll also see an accompanying license.txt. So I'm going to go back over to here. I'm going to try this compile thing again. It's not compiling my libraries. It doesn't look like it is. Okay. Let me try this again. NCC, not compiling libraries, not compiling node modules. Like, I don't know what it wants. It's not telling me. I don't know if it's because I changed it to the type to be module, but I'm pretty sure it is module. I'm going to take this out again and see what happens. We'll just take this out like this. And we'll try this again. No, I didn't change anything. So I'll just put that back in there because I know that we probably need that in there to work. So I'll go back and take a look at this again. Change the main keyword in your action to be dist. All right, we'll try that. What a pain this is. If you already checked in your node modules directory, remove it. Well, I didn't because you said to compile it to 1. Checking in your node modules directory can cause problems. As an alternative, you can use a tool called vercel to compile your code and modules into 1 file used for distribution. All right, whatever. Okay, we'll try it again. There, I'm so excited for this. Okay, we will tag this again, and we will push this again, and we will go back over to here, and we will check this again, and we'll see that it fails, and then we'll get upset because it just never works. All right, so try this, 6. We'll run it again. Please, please work. Please work. I don't understand how that could work. There's no modules in there. Okay, well, whatever. It works now. Do we get our output? We do. So there you go. That's how you create a custom action with JavaScript. So hopefully you learned about the inputs, the outputs, the configuration of it, how we could identify files. And it seems like a lot of this debugging could have just been, I could have redone this video, made it a lot cleaner, but I can tell on the exam, they actually ask you how to debug. So we kind of answered all those things by me being frustrated here. So that's totally fine. So yeah, I'd say we're done there, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, ciao.